I drove my rusty pickup to the local game store door. Starfield gleamed upon the shelf, couldn't wait no more. Todd Howard spun his stories of galaxies afar, but when I fired up that game, I didn't get too far. Oh, Todd, you sold me stardust, but gave me empty skies. Promised me the universe with all your alibis. I fell for all your stories, like I always do. Starfield left me wishing for a game that's true. They boasted endless planets, each one unique and new. But after planet number 3, I'd seen a deja vu. The critics didn't love it, gave it mediocre scores. Just another space misfire echoed across the boards. Oh, Todd, you sold me stardust, but gave me empty skies. Promised me the universe with all your alibis. I fell for all your stories, like I always do. Starfield left me wishing for a game that's true. I searched for epic battles, but the AI wouldn't fight. Characters were wooden and the dialogue was trite. Todd promised me the cosmos, but left me in the dust. Now I'm trading in this game, it's betrayed my trust. Oh, Todd, you weaved a fable of worlds beyond compare, but all I got were glitches and load screens everywhere. Still somehow I'm considering when the next game's nigh, 'cause hope's a stubborn thing, and I'll give it one more try. Oh, Todd, you sold me stardust, but gave me empty skies. Promised me the universe with all your alibis. I fell for all your stories, like I'll always do. Starfield left me wishing for a game that's true. Oh, Todd, you sold me stardust, but gave me empty skies.
I'm vibing.
Promised me the universe with all your alibis. I fell for all your stories, like I always do. Starfield left me wishing for a game that's true.
Sixteen times the
Imagine
detail.
a hero shooter where the hero never showed.
That's most definitely what's up.
Imagine a game with a player base that just refused to grow. A 5v5 hero shooter with gameplay that's just okay, and characters that remind me of Tupperware and white bread. No, I'm not talking about Overwatch. Please stop bringing up Overwatch. This game is not Overwatch. It's actually something else. Imagine a game with a story that no one watches. A game that costs $40 that Sony totally botches. It has all my favorite characters, like Lemmy, Dawn, and Craig. At least, I think that's what their names are. I never bothered to check. Concord like the grave, your legacy is safe as a game that no one played, and a price that no one paid. Boop-a-doop-ba, deep-a-doop-da, scoop-a-boop-ba, beep-beep-beep-beep-beep, phlegm. Concord was about as good as accidentally peeing on your own leg. Concord, we're here to lay you to rest. We know you tried your best. You copied so much cool stuff just to turn out lame in the end. I'll never forget my favorite moments, like when Hot Sauce Guy jumped. Remember when he jumped? That was really cool. A rat just ran by on my desk, and even the rat didn't want to play Concord, even though I blessed him with the chance. The $40 he could afford, but the rat just stared on in a trance. Rat, 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 rat. Concord's dead. Rat, 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 rat. Concord's dead. The Costco guys made more money than you. They were just on Jimmy Fallon too. Imagine Lennox being on Jimmy Fallon, because I literally can't. The rat on my desk is eating all my Cheerios and grapes. And also Concord is dead. Concord like the grave. Your legacy is safe as a game that no one played, and a price that no one paid. Rat-a-ta-ta beep-a-da boom. Skim, milk, rat fleet, doo-da, doo-da. A guy said he really liked it, and then a bunch of rats ate his face. That's the sound he made when Concord passed away. I wish things turned out different, but either way I'm getting paid. Concord's dead, Concord's dead, and boy is my face red. When the game came out, everybody overslept. Concord's dead, Concord's dead. Holy crap, Lois, Concord's dead. When the game out, people played everything else instead.
Welcome everybody. I definitely was not stalling for time with those two songs as I shoved my face full of food. That's not what happened. How dare you think that? You know, when I came down to the studio, all the lights were off. And in the background, I just saw a haunting visage, because I had left the Todd Howard cutout standing here. So I opened the door, and then I see like a shaded 5'8", or I don't know how tall Todd is, but the cardboard cutout is like 5'10" or something. But I just see the faint face of a man standing in my studio, hands casually in the pockets with a sexy ass jacket on, and I had a mini heart attack. Like, you know those little mini heart attacks where like you get the chill all the way through your body in an instant? That's what happened. I was like, it's Todd. It's my own damn fault leaving him up like this, not putting him back to rest, but that's what we get. I filmed a video on the Indiana Jones game, skeptical look video at that. We're gonna release that soon, but they just dropped a deeper dive video from the official Xbox podcast, and we're gonna look at that in case there's any new information in here that I'm not aware of. So we'll look at that because they talk about it. The Xbox podcast thing, it reminds me of, I forget the name of it. Disney does this too. They do a like Disney park podcast, but it's official. And like, so it's paid for by Disney. Disney sponsorship. Disney sponsors it. I saw it mentioned in Jenny Nicholson's video, like her massive video where they're talking about the different podcasts and things and how awkward it is because it's not like, yeah, here's a snippet of it. These podcasts, like, it's officially sponsored by Disney. So Disney pays for it. Its panelists receive compensation for their participation on Plan Disney. So like, it's framed as though they're just talking to casual fans, but it's paid for. Like, it's a corporate podcast. And like, the other thing she points out is like, they all talk in that corporate way where we call it Star Wars Land or like the Star Wars Hotel. Everybody in this is like the Star Wars Galaxy's Edge getaway experience or whatever is every time they're using it in a sentence. Like, they don't talk like normal people because they have to check off the corporate box of like, did you say the marketing term? And that's what the Xbox podcast has always kind of felt like to me, is that sort of corporate means of just giving us a commercial that's 25 minutes long or 26 minutes long, but trying to make it feel like it's just a bunch of people talking, and it just feels really weird. It's always just not sat quite right with me. It always sounds like, what are we doing? But whatever. We'll watch it. We'll check it out. The thought of having to go search up Todd Howard cardboard cutout. Dude, we did it impulsively years ago, and some company in England was doing a Todd Howard cutout. Like, I don't know when that order came in, when I placed the order, because he was like $80. He's an expensive cardboard cutout. But when I sent the order in, I'm sure they were like, somebody actually bought, like, we listed it on the website as a joke. Somebody got it. Like, they probably had a Fallout fan or something, because we probably got that. It was in the wake of Fallout 76. It was probably like 2019, 2020. I think I was working in real estate when I got that. Money was very tight, and that's where I chose to spend my money. Worth it. Worth it, no doubt. No doubt. $80 for cardboard? How dare you? Todd is way more than just cardboard. He's cut out in the shape of a man. That makes it more valuable, right? Let's see. Where was I? Did I know Concord's dead? I'd heard rumblings. Let's see. You know, outside all of the hilarious meme you do with Starfield, does it deserve all the hate it gets? I mean, I think in the mix of all of this, the core message has been kind of lost, where people now, I mean, it's popular to meme on Starfield for being garbage. My stance on Starfield is the same as it was back at launch, though how they've handled it after it's launched has tainted some bits of it. But basically, like, my problem with Starfield is that it's just a bleh game. Like, there's stuff that they do in it that's cool. The 1,000 planets is cool. The procedural tech is cool. That's all cool. This, like, the shipbuilding, I love the shipbuilding. I think that deserves a ton of credit. That's awesome. Being able to build your own ship, walk around inside it, fly it around, and get in dogfights with it. That's all cool. The problem is that there's no real cohesive gameplay loop that really makes the game fun. And I think Todd was aware of that, which is why he said openly in interviews, we didn't find the fun until 2021. Like, they had worked on this for years, and they were hoping they would stumble into a way to make this fun. And it took that long. And even then, I don't think they really found it. Because Bethesda's strength is with, like, handcrafted levels and environmental storytelling, and Starfield is literally the antithesis of that. Like, it is the opposite of that. And so for me, like, Starfield is just the most bleh, kind of boring C-, D+ kind of game. Like, it's just doesn't really excel at anything except the shipbuilding. And it was hyped up and promised to be this expansive, like, game of the generation, kind of jaw-dropping technical marvel, and it just was never going to be that. And so I think that that's why, like I've said before, it's why it's so crucial to have your expectations in check, because if you're expecting, like, the 10 out of 10, but the game ends up being, well, again, the number scheme gets everybody confused, because some people think 5 out of 10 is average, but American school systems, C is like average. So if we go with just letter-based grades, if we say you were expecting an A+, and you actually got a C+ game, or even just a C game, this gap, I mean, this could still very well be worth playing. There's a lot of C games that are worth playing, lots of games that have big problems that are worth playing and checking out, in my opinion. But especially on Game Pass, if it's included. So, like, a C is not bad. That's fine. It's just not great or a masterpiece or anything. It's just fine. It's got some big problems. But if you were expecting this drop off feels real bad, man. It'll make the perceived rating probably feel more like a D or like a D-. It just feels, when you are expecting a masterpiece or a game of the generation, when it drops to a C, it will feel like a D, even though it's not. And that's kind of where Starfield is for a lot of people. I think they were expecting the masterpiece, and it's just not that. And so it feels way worse than they were expecting. And so this line between C and D kind of starts to get blurred, and all anybody says is like, well, it's way worse than it should have been, which is probably fair. Where my view's been tainted is that they spent a year on Shattered Space, and it was shockingly lacking in content. And also, like, I really don't know what they were doing for a year to make that. After watching that Will Shen interview or a speech at GDC where he's very openly saying like, oh yeah, no, all their systems are super inefficient and broken. Makes a lot of sense. But I think that's it. Furthermore, like, there's been no acknowledgement. There's been no clear intention to fix any of the problems except the rover. There's just been nothing at all that has shown that they've acknowledged the frustrations players had. And for me, like, my whole goal, people always ask, like, why do you keep covering it? Ultimately, it's because I'm a fan. Like many of you guys, I'm a former fan, hardcore fan of Bethesda Game Studios titles. I love the Fallout franchise. I love Elder Scrolls as a franchise. And what they've done to these games over the last 10 years or so has been not just selling out with Fallout 76, but and like the microtransactions and paid mods. I know you can be like, oh, well, it's not a microtransaction. It's a $7 quest. That's totally different. It's a $7 quest in a single player game. And the quest was broken when it launched. Like, you got a gun as a reward for the quest, and you couldn't reload it. So you had 4 total shots with it before it broke, and you couldn't use it in gameplay. Like, if Ubisoft did that, headlines across the internet, it's all anybody would talk about for weeks. And Bethesda now is getting to the point where people will talk about that and bring it up, but they've been kind of scummy and lazy like that for a long time. And my goal is to shine the light on it so they realize we can't get away with that anymore, and they step back and they figure their crap out. But are they going to do that? Probably not. Todd's moving behind me. Yeah, dude, it's Todd. One day, if I'm really lucky, one day I'll start stream, and then I'll have what appears to be the cardboard cutout, and then he's going to start moving, and he's going to pull up a chair next to me, and that's how we'll introduce that we're doing like a podcast episode together. I think that'd be really funny. So with all this, it's just the perception. Again, perception is the reality you deal with. The perception is that Bethesda doesn't really care about their customers or what they say, whether it's critical or positive. Like, they just are going to do whatever they want to do. They're going to monetize however they want to monetize. Even when Maddie tried to confront Todd a little bit when he did the interview with him back over the summer, I understand, like, you're meeting one of your heroes, so it's awkward to confront him and be like, this is really unethical what you're doing. But even when he asked him about it, Todd was like, yeah, we need to reevaluate our pricing. It's like, okay, so we're going to keep doing it. Okay, cool. Okay. Yeah. Todd's interfering with the audio. On my end, everything is smooth. Let me see what it looks like through Restream. Let's see. Talk, testing my audio. Now it's not choppy. There was a hiccup. Okay, weird. I don't know what the deal is, fam. Sorry. That's weird. That's weird. Hopefully it doesn't keep doing that. I'm finally getting the new internet, by the way. I told you guys the story of how the internet service provider was trying to spike my price to $300 a month. And then they're like, well, we'd happily give it to you for $180 if you sign up for a 3-year contract. And I was like, dry up. How dare you? And their big competitor that has way better service is boring into my neighborhood as we speak. So if we drop internet connectivity at any point in the like this week, while we're streaming, that's probably why. They're probably hooking up that stuff. So it'll be frustrating for all of us, but it's going to be good in the long term because we should get like fiber at the end of this, and I am so freaking ready. Like, how scummy for them to be like, yeah, well, we spiked your price, but we'll sell you the solution, but you have to lock into a 3-year plan. And I have a business account with them. It's not like this is a residential account where they're trying to take advantage of like some grandma who doesn't know what internet speeds are. Like, they're trying to do this to me. Imagine what they're doing to like the average Joe that lives next door, you know? Like, it's really scummy. And they were doing that in the weeks right before this new company came in to offer their service in the neighborhood. Really slimy, but it'll be okay. It'll be okay. We're going to get the new service and it's going to be sick. Because no joke, I was looking at it. I was like, if they keep spiking the prices, it might get to the point where it's cheaper to move than it is to stay here and pay the higher internet, because I have to have the top tier internet stuff. So like it's just stupid. It's crazy, but now it's worked out. Yeah, funny how a little competition makes them go, oh wait, here's more to offer. Yeah, literally. I mean, it's just a little bit of competition and it's totally changed their attitude. But that's what it takes. It just takes somebody being like, okay, we're going to come in and we're going to do everything better than you. Because I guarantee you, like, they hung all the door hangers on everybody's doors for this new company. I guarantee you 95% of people are going to move to the new company. Because this other one has been terrible. And, like, you know how some internet providers, they run all of their cables under the roads? Which makes more sense because, like, when it's snowing, when there's a storm, you still have internet service. For this current company that we have, all of their internet lines are run through and hung along the telephone poles, like along the telephone wires. So if there is literally ever any storm anywhere, the service drops, because if one of those pillars falls over, all of the internet drops for like entire neighborhoods at a time. Like, but this new company, they run everything under the ground. And so there are no problems with any of that. Way better. Way better. So I'm very excited. Brendan, thank you for that. 5. Bethesda did release free quests and free car. How many did they sell? If by the car you mean the Rover, yeah, the Rover was a good free update. I will give you that. The Rover is a good free update, and I said that in my video. I'm like, it doesn't really change the core problem people had, which was that exploration was boring and the stuff you find when you're exploring is the same stuff over and over again. But the Rovers are a good addition, and I'm really glad to see that they added it because I think it adds a lot to the game. But is it enough to save it? Probably not. Like, I still think with Starfield, you can get to about 15, 20 hours. And at that point, you will be saying, this is like the best game I've played from Bethesda. This is really, really good. But, oh, dude, they dropped the teaser for the Concord thing. That's so funny. Okay, we'll have to watch this. That's so funny. Anyway, I forgot what I was saying. Concord secret level. They just dropped the teaser for it. The Prime trailer. I don't see it on YouTube or anything, so I think it's just on X at this point. Dude, you want to see it? I'm sure we're gonna get copyright struck if I show the whole thing. But this is that Amazon show that they greenlit for Concord. I'm just like scrubbing through it because if we play the whole thing, Amazon's gonna show up. You know they are. So my understanding, I guess we could do this. New segment, Jacob. New teaser, first teaser. Let me try that again. First teaser for the Concord episode of the video game anthology series Secret Level, releasing December 10th on Prime Video. What is amazing about this is that the game for which this is being made, of course, is now like lost media. It's dead. It's not technically lost because a lot of us still have it installed on our PlayStations, but you can't launch it. You can't play it. And they greenlit this episode, which cost them millions and millions and millions of dollars. They greenlit this episode a year, 2 years ago. I don't know when they would have greenlit it, but long enough for them to make it. And it shows like the arrogance, perhaps, of Sony's leadership, that they just assumed that this would pop off. They just assumed people would love this and that this would be kind of like a, I mean, I'm trying to think of other live service games. Even if Overwatch had their own dedicated episode, I'd be like, okay, who cares? Like, but it reflects what like Colin Moriarty said, his source communicated, which is that Herman Hulst called it his baby, or people called it Herman Hulst baby. They expected it to be a Star Wars level franchise for them. They expected this to pop off on that level. And it starts to make sense why they were greenlighting all this stuff if they approached it that way, if they really thought that Concord was going to be received that way. I'm scrubbing through it because if I play it outright, it's going to get copyright struck, no doubt. In the lead up to this, they've also said that they anticipate this will show the potential that Concord's characters had. This will show the potential of the world and stuff. But it is at its core reflective of the dissonance within all of the entire Concord project, which was just that they framed it as this amazing world with interesting characters and stuff, but it's a hero shooter. And I can imagine the boardroom meeting where like Herman and all those guys and the Sony execs from Japan, they're all like, so we're going to spend how many hundreds of millions of dollars on this project? I thought PlayStation's whole thing, like our whole thing was single player narrative driven stuff. And Herman's like, that's the brilliance of this. We have this innovative new storytelling technique, which ended up just being a cutscene that plays before you boot into the game, which every other live service game does. But this one will change every week. He's like, we have that. And it's a really expansive world and universe. We're going to do this episode with this anthology series through Amazon Prime that's going to build the world and universe and everything. And so people will come for, it's interesting. I think they thought that people would come for the story and for the world and characters, and they would stay for the gameplay. When live service games typically work the opposite. They come for the gameplay and they stay for like the new characters, the long-term support, stuff like that. But at the core, like gameplay is probably 85-95% of the equation. But with this, I think they really thought that they could flip it and it would pop off. That people would be like, you know, I'm not in love with the gameplay. Gameplay is kind of bland, but Hot Sauce Guy is super cool. I love Hot Sauce Guy. I'm going to keep playing because I want to see where his story goes next week. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any damn sense. Luke should absolutely review the Concord episode. Dude, I will. You better believe I will. Some of them look good. I mean, the God of War one that they're going to drop, I'm sure it's going to be badass. I think they're going to do some cool episodes. It's just, again, the hubris, as one of you put in chat. The hubris is what's really interesting about this. People love that Arcane. They'll love this. Yeah, it's like we talked about on the podcast with Joe Raptor with the Horizon stuff, because of course the Horizon Lego game continues to nosedive. And it's really bizarre because that game was never going to sell gangbusters. I'm sure they spent, I don't know how many millions they spent on it. But they spent a good chunk of change. You know, it wasn't a free game or anything. And they marketed it a lot. And already, like, Player counts have almost completely dried up, and it's a concurrent player count. So this is all about, I mean, this is a single player game. You wouldn't expect this number to be particularly high, but seeing all-time peaks in this range for even a single player game in what's supposed to be their biggest franchise or one of their biggest franchises, with estimated sales, I would guess, because typically these are all very generous. As I said on the podcast, I think they probably sold across both, like all platforms, they probably sold about 10,000 copies of this. Like, this isn't turning a profit. I don't think this is turning a profit. But this is what happens when Sony keeps insisting that they're going to make this a thing. They're going to make Horizon a thing, and you're going to like it. You know, they're trying to just force players into liking stuff that they just don't really like. And it's the same thing with Concord, is they were like, no, you're going to like it because it has like a Guardians of the Galaxy vibe. And we say we have really good characters. I know all of you think they're insufferable, but we say they're good, so that makes them good. It's just arrogance. And this has always been the plague upon Sony, because people forget, like, going out of the PS2 into the PS3 generation, Sony was at the top. Sony was kicking butt and taking names, and then, in the words of Peter Griffin, giving those names to other people whose butts they had kicked already. They were seemingly at the precipice. There was no beating them. And then they released the PS3, and it is horrifically expensive for the time. It ends up being incredibly difficult to develop for with its unique architecture. And as a result, games run very buggy on the PS3 versus the 360. And Sony loses a ton of ground and really was playing catch up, trying to repair their reputation for a long time. And they got hungry again. They stopped being so cocky and arrogant, and they got hungry, and then started the PS4 generation. Who was it that was arrogant? It was Xbox. Xbox comes in and says, you need to buy our always online machine. And if you don't like our always online machine, too bad, you can buy the 360. We still have that available. Yeah, and that's a good point, Banana. Yeah, they also at the PS3 generation, at the same time, Sony is struggling with convincing people their console's worth the price and that it's worth putting up with the bugs and that developers should put up with the difficulty in developing for it. They also are coming out swinging with Gears of War, with Halo. I mean, really the golden age of Xbox, in my opinion, is that 360 era. But then the PS4 generation comes around with the Xbox One, always online. If you don't like it, buy a 360. They were pushing Kinect. The whole selling point of the Xbox One that was in all of the marketing was that it was a cable box game console hybrid. A cable box game console hybrid. It's the most corporate thing ever, where they looked at the spreadsheet and saw everybody has a cable box because everybody has cable. People like gaming. If we make a cable box gaming device, all of the cable box people will buy our cable box, and all the gaming people will buy the gaming box. We'll get double the sales. It makes so much, like, it is the most clear-cut example of corporate leadership by spreadsheet that I've ever seen. Like, it was so insane. It was so stupid. And then everything else, like, you can't share your games, and Sony posts that viral clip of how to share your games on PlayStation, and it's just them handing the box to the other guy. And that's the whole thing. It was like 13 seconds long. And Sony dominates the PS4 generation, especially with like later generation console exclusives that really sell it, are taking Game of the Year awards. And they built up this brand reputation that if Sony's releasing something from one of these key studios, whether that's like Naughty Dog or Santa Monica, like they're going to win Game of the Year. And that's kind of presumed nowadays, kind of like Rockstar. You assume if Rockstar's releasing something, it's going to get nominated and it's probably going to win. Might not. Sometimes there's an upset like God of War, but typically, like, when Rockstar comes out swinging, they're going to dominate. And same with Naughty Dog and those guys. Well, Xbox floundered. And now it seems like PlayStation's in a similar boat as they were in that PS3 generation, where they have grown incredibly cocky. And perhaps rightly so. I mean, they really did dominate the PS4 gen. They've been dominating the PS5 gen so far. But players have started to grow frustrated because all Sony seems to be focused on is remakes, remasters, spin-offs of a franchise nobody, frankly, cares that much about. And I mean, you might love Horizon. It doesn't seem like you're playing that.
This is why Phil is releasing Xbox games on PS5. Sony is stumbling. Make their customers love Xbox games. Next gen they'll be exclusive again.
I don't think they'll pull it. Thank you for the 12 months, by the way. Happy 1 year. Happy anniversary. We made it, Lucas. We did it. I don't think they will pull and start doing totally exclusive stuff next gen. What I think Xbox is just doing is they're like, hardware is tough. It's really tough to be competitive. Let's just let Sony deal with all that crap, and we'll sell games to their customers.
Karma Moon donated
Big money either way.
$49.99.
Karma?
Super chat. Hey Luke, sorry to interrupt, but I had a question. I'm not a fan of BGS and I just watched Internet Historian video on 76 and don't understand how people still trust them. They seem
cut off. They seem unwilling to be better and have objectively lied to fans constantly. Thank you. Yes, I agree. This is why, like, in the lead up to Starfield, like, I was waving that red flag all around. I was like, guys, a few short years ago, they lied to your face and intentionally sold you something totally broken and horrible. And they knew it was totally broken and horrible. Like, why are we magically believing them now? Like, it doesn't make any sense. And I think there's two parts of it. For one, I think it's that, like 53 Nights says, they did make some improvements. They did fix it up. And even though I still don't think it's particularly great, I can understand why people are playing it. And there is a community there. So they worked on it. And honestly, I think a lot of that goes to Pete Hines, who's since retired. He had a philosophy at Bethesda that he spoke very openly about, where he said, we don't abandon games. We put our games out and we care for them. And if they don't meet the mark at launch, we fix them until they meet the mark. And that was Pete Hines' philosophy for a very long time. And I think he pushed for it real hard. He was pushing for it at Arcane Studios Austin and wanted them to kind of see a redemption arc for Redfall. That was something he talked about very openly. But he retired, and just a matter of months later, they shut down the studio. So I think Pete Hines was like the last line of defense for fixing up these broken launches at ZeniMax. And once he was gone, everybody was like, yeah, it doesn't make sense. I mean, even if we fix Redfall, nobody's going to go back to it. So yeah, just move on. But yeah, I think there's that part of it where they fix it up. And I think players, the other piece of it is that players just have a shorter memory, and people love to be hyped. They love it. 'Cause it's fun. It's fun to be hyped for Todd's next project. And he's a good salesman. He's good at convincing you it's worth getting excited over. And so every time Todd comes out with a new announcement, things are different now. That was a fluke. Now he really means it. And it's why we sell those shirts, you know, hype makes you stupid. You know, it's why I say that all the time, because like hype is almost like it's on a similar side of like just, you know, some goddamn faith, you know, Arthur. That's what it is. It's just there's evidence suggesting that maybe he's not going to be totally upfront with you, or at least he's going to leave some important parts out in the service of getting you hyped to buy and play his game. We've seen this literally for decades from him. So a critical thinker would be like, okay, let's withhold judgment. Let's not get hyped and excited. Let's wait until he's really sold us on it. But the hyped people go, no, I have faith he's going to figure it out. This is the time. This is the time he's going to live up to it. And yeah, like these other games didn't totally live up to it, but it's because it was building to this. There's always an excuse. There's always a reason. And I can understand why people want to do that, because that sort of self-delusion is fun. And it's a lot easier to go through the industry excitedly and hyped up for stuff when you just turn off your critical thinking. But it's also a great way to get conned and to have your money wasted and your time and passion and care wasted. That's what I can't stand. Like, I don't like seeing companies utilizing hype and irrationality for the sake of their profits. Like, I think that that's just really scummy. And that's why we've been pushing for critical thinking, for skepticism. And some people get it twisted. Some people think that skepticism is just cynicism. I even heard it in the lead up to Starfield, where we were talking about it very openly, and there were Xbox fanboys making videos about me being like, no, Luke he doesn't care if the game's really good. He's going to be skeptical no matter what. Or he'll just say that sucks and be skeptical about it. It's like, okay, tell me you don't know what skepticism means without saying you don't know what skepticism means. Like, really does not translate like that. We just withhold judgment until there's sufficient evidence. And when there's a track record of constant and consistent abuses, the standard gets raised a lot. And that's the key. Like, and I understand some people don't want to consider that, or it's awkward to consider it. But when there's a company that has consistently screwed you over and has shown no interest in correcting those mistakes, the odds are pretty high they're going to do it again. So, anyway, let's see. What was I saying? Oh yeah. Anyway. So with this, I'm going to watch it because I'm fascinated. I don't think I'm seeing any of the characters from the like base game. Not that I see. Ooh, spooky. But even with all this, like, this is, again, just the dissonance with this whole project. Even if this is really good, all it would make me want is a narrative game in this universe. Like, let's say this is amazing. It's just going to make me want a narrative version of this, which they weren't making. It was a 5v5 hero shooter. And that's what just never made any sense about Concord. Like, it's just, at its core, it doesn't make sense. And ultimately, that's why it flops. Because if the game doesn't make sense, if the narrative doesn't make sense, it's not going to go anywhere. And that's what we saw. So, insanity. Let me catch up on these super chats real quick. You guys have been popping off. Thank you for that. Let me head over here. Thank you to all the new followers over on Twitch, by the way. Thank you, guys. Let's see. Brendan Lucas, thank you for the 5. No, they released a new rover in addition to the last rover and a quest in Aquila City, cooking quest. Oh, I see what you mean. They dropped. Do. No, that's not it. When I search new rover Starfield, I'm only seeing videos from August. Is it like a new skin for the rover? I don't know. Because I haven't heard that they did a new skin for the rover or anything, but maybe they did, or maybe it's just in the like paid mod shop. I don't know. As for a new cooking quest in Aquila City, cool. I think adding quests is fine. I think selling quests after the fact sucks, but the Distinguished Dragon, thank you for the 5. Have you had a chance to play Balatro yet? Yes, and it's all I can think about. Balatro's very good, and while I can appreciate it, I still wouldn't nominate it for like Game of the Year awards personally. Like, it's good. But I just wouldn't put it in the category against some of these like monsters that we've seen. Yeah, like it was nominated for Game of the Year. I understand people memeing on it. It's like, it's an effing card game. Why is it nominated? It's very good. If you've not played it, you should play it. But I'm warning you, you're going to get addicted. It's very good. And it would have been so easy for them to monetize it in a really toxic way. And they didn't. And so you just get a really addicting card game that's not monetized out the ass, which is refreshing. It It's good, but I don't think it's game of the year good, you know? Like, I'm going to be playing it for years. But I think the standard for game of the year should also include like an artistic side. I think it should include a narrative side. Like when I think of game of the year, personally, to me, I think of something that is more overarching. Like I would be upset if, I'm trying to think of a different example. Like even games, like really good games like Smash Bros. Amazing game. Amazing game. Thinking of Smash Bros winning game of the year just doesn't sit right in my brain. Because I feel like their game of the year should be the game that does, like, as they even say here, delivers the best absolute best experience across all creative and technical fields. And the creative field, I feel, is where, like, games like Balatro just are not there. Gameplay-wise, phenomenal, brilliant, dare I say. Again, it's all I can think about. But it does, like, there's no narrative to the side of the game's design. There's no wild technical achievement in terms of graphics and things. And some of these other games manage to do all of that at the same time, you know? And so I just think games like Balatro, while amazing, and they should have perhaps their own category, I just personally don't think of it as like game of the year level. To me, it doesn't wear enough hats to be there. Does that make sense? Let's see. But yeah, what an ass year for gaming. I mean, the problem is that I actually bookmarked a meme somebody made about this. Let me see. Where is it? Yeah. Here. Game of the year: Space Marine 2, Helldivers 2, Stellar Blade, Silent Hill 2, a DLC, and a freaking card game. And that's kind of how I feel about it. I'm like, look, Balatro's great. I don't personally think it's game of the year level because it doesn't excel in a wide spread of those technical and creative fields. It's very good at what it does, but it's just not, it doesn't wear enough hats. And a DLC, as I've said before, a DLC is a downloadable piece of content for another game, for the parent game. It's literally not a game. You could say it's big enough to be its own game. Okay. But it's not. There's plenty of examples of DLC that turned into full games. But this didn't. It's not its own game. It's a DLC that requires you to play. Mog is pretty late in the game. Probably like 70%, 60% of Elden Ring. You got to play in order to get to the DLC. Like, it's literally not a game. I do not understand why it's nominated for Game of the Year. Like, it's not a game. It is a DLC for a game. It's like, it doesn't make any sense in my brain. It just doesn't click. I don't understand how anybody could be like, yeah, let's kick out one of these, or even like a Pal World, which blew up. I understand like Pal World's not the most amazing game. I don't think it should win, but being nominated over a DLC, yeah, I mean, at least it's a game, you know. But yeah, no, ignore all these. Focus on these, you know. I feel like Jeff really wanted to put the DLC in there because Jeff has final say on like the category descriptions, but there's no transparency in these votes or anything. So we don't know whether it's like a total blank space and everybody just writes in what they think deserves Game of the Year or what. But if Jeff Keighley wanted to say, no, like Shadow of the Air Tree is a DLC, it doesn't qualify. Boom, done. He didn't do that, though. He wants it to be nominated. He wants to keep Hidetaka happy, so he included it. And then people started voting for it. And so like a day or two before they announce all the nominations, he says, yep, and we're going to include these DLC in the lineup. And it's just like, okay, we all know what you're doing. Like, you're not fooling anybody. Like, You wanted this to be one of the games nominated, or one of the projects nominated. It's not even a game. But anyway. Where else was I? Okay, R. Daniel, thank you for that. I give €2 and it's gone. Thank you, my friend. Nilax, thank you for the 5. Every generation, Sony loads up on a game with a red-headed female protagonist. Remember Heavenly Sword? They have some weird fascination. I mean, by that standard, if they do they have a white gruff dude fascination? Because they have Joel and they have Deacon St. John and they have, all these other rough and tumble white dudes. Like, we can find a couple of examples of each, Lucas, thank you for that one. Let's see, I think it read this one. No, I reckon this is why I fail. Oh yeah, I did read that one. Karma, again, thank you for the very generous 50. That was very generous. Jinx, thank you for the 5. What if Sony simply didn't let Microsoft release their games on PlayStation? They'd be screwing with nowhere to sell their games. That would lead us all to a place which is actually pretty well known. It's called Lawsuit City, population Sony, and that would freak out every regulator, like, in the entire world. Everybody would be like, you can't do that. Like, your lead competitor in the gaming space, you're just not going to sell their stuff. Cause like it wouldn't go well for Sony. And that would not go great. And they know that. I mean, they know that. It would be very, very anti-competitive. And I can't think of a single regulator that would go along with it. Like, Apple has tried for years to keep people from releasing apps on iPhone on their closed hardware through a different store. But Apple can't prevent somebody from putting an app on their app store if they adhere to their own policies. They can't just blindly block an app. And there's been times where they've tried to. I think there was even an example, some news, or was it like Telegram or something? There was an example of an app that they kicked off their app store because they said that it violated policies. People thought it was just because they were being targeted or whatever, but I think there were lawsuits and stuff involved with that. But the point was, they claimed that they were breaking policy. If a company wants to sell through your platform and they adhere to your policies and they're doing nothing wrong, you can't just block them arbitrarily, or there will be lawsuits and all that. Was it Parler? Parler sounds right. Yeah. Let's see, where else was I? Aiden, thank you for that 10. Very generous. Hey, Luke, why do you think a game like Concord failed so bad, but Marvel Rivals is doing really well? Could it just be because Marvel Rivals is already a well-known IP? Love the streams, by the way. I think there's a few pieces. For one, and I've said this 1,000 times, Concord failed extra spectacularly, and there was so much kind of jubilation around its failure and discourse about it because of what Concord represented. Concord represented this pursuit of live service at the cost of creative integrity on the part of Sony. And so people wanted to celebrate its failure. So that's number one. And that peer pressure where everybody started memeing about how uncool Concord was, how cringe it was, all this. Nobody wants to play an uncool game. Peer pressure is a powerful tool in the live service space, because I know for a fact, and I told the story where I wanted to play Suicide Squad for a video, and I wanted to fill out the party so I could see what it was like to play with actual people, because there were so few people playing that I couldn't matchmake. And I offered to some of my friends, I said, I will buy you the game. At the time, it was still $70. I was like, I will buy you each a copy of the game because I need it for footage. I need to experiment with it. None of them wanted it. None of them wanted a free game because they thought it looked so uncool, so uninteresting, and they just didn't want to even bother with it, that they turned down a free $70 game because I'm good. And that's Concord in a nutshell. Nobody wanted to jump on that bandwagon because they knew where it was going. Nobody wants to get on a sinking ship. And the second that Concord had the first playtest that went nowhere, everybody knew how that story was going to end. And so nobody wanted to spend $40 to potentially get attached to a game that was probably going to be dead within a few months anyways, which ended up happening. So I think there's that. The $40 price point certainly didn't help. Do I think it was like the deciding factor? It's hard to say. But it was the omnipresent consideration, I think, is key. Because whenever anybody thought about playing the free beta test, because I saw people say that, they're like, well, the price point wasn't the problem, because even when the beta test was free, people didn't want to jump in and didn't want to play it. That's true, but they knew the game was going to cost $40. So they're like, I can try a free demo of a game that if I end up liking, I'm going to have to spend $40. I play these other live service games now. I'm good. I'm just not even going to bother potentially convincing myself to spend $40. Like, I'm good, you know? And so I think it was the omnipresent consideration. And if it didn't have the direct role for a lot of people, it was an indirect consequence. So I think there's that, but it just, there wasn't, at its core, maybe the difference is with Marvel Rivals, the game looks really fun. It looks wacky and crazy. I've played it during the play tests that they did however many weeks or months ago, and it was really solid. And they have something insane. Like, how many playable characters do they have? Roster, that's it. It's like a lot. It's a lot. It's a 6v6 hero shooter. Like, they have all of these. They have tons. I saw somebody outlining like the full lineup after a month. Oh yeah, they have the tier list already. But it's really solid. It's polished. It plays well. It's free. So if you want to play it, you can do that. And it has a lot of other like just quality of life additions that Concord was painfully lacking. And it's just, it is a very, very well executed live service game. And it's not even out yet. And we'll see how it does when it's actually out and people are playing it. We'll see if it makes money. But they've done a really good job with it, as far as I can tell. How's Marvel's Rivals? Is it any good? Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of fun with it. I mean, when it comes out, me and my group, we're going to move from Overwatch, which we play maybe once a week, you know, with me and my brothers. We're going to move over there, have a good time, you know, because it's really solid. And the other, like, little quality of life stuff, like the match replay tool, so freaking cool. If you play a match and you're like, this is awesome, I want to just re-experience it, or I want to show it on Discord to somebody, you just save the match and it has all of the inputs, everything, and it just captures the entire match. You can go with different camera angles because it captured all the inputs, everything. So you can just re-simulate the entire match all the way through like a replay. Freaking badass. Freaking badass. And little stuff like that that's just not present in other games. And I mean, you can see them suffer as a result. So there's that. Where else was I? Edgar, thank you for the 5. Game Awards are a giant advert anyways. I know you got to nurture the industry, but I can't believe I miss E3. Yeah, I think I do think it's a balancing act as always. I have felt like at least the last couple of years, there haven't been any like huge, super exciting announcements at the Game Awards to really make it feel like worth it. And Summer Game Fest still isn't quite as exciting as E3 ever was. So I think it just feels like we lost a lot and then we got it replaced with some more mediocre stuff that primarily serves to pad the egos of some industry bigwigs. And that's too bad. That's too bad. Yeah, E3 started to suck by the end. You're absolutely right. And I mean, I went in the last year. I went in E3 2019. And everybody had pulled out. Like, E3 2019. Like, that was the year that we had the Cyberpunk thing with "You're breathtaking." But even this was at the Xbox show. Like, this was Xbox doing this. This wasn't part technically of of E3. It was kind of its own thing at the Microsoft Theater. Bethesda did their own kind of spin-off thing, and they all labeled it E3. They did have a booth there. It was all like Fallout 76 themed stuff. This was also the year they added a Battle Royale mode to Fallout 76. I remember that. I still have Jacob, actually. Are you still in here? Jacob has this pin. They had a pin that looks just like this that they handed out as swag at E3, and I got it. I brought it back and I gave it to Jacob, and I think he put it on his backpack or something. Yeah, this is like a very guttural, like, ooh, I recognize that. I remember that. I remember. Some Doom stuff. Like, it was fine, but the ultimate problem was like, if you look at E3, E3's like, okay, we have a big building we've rented out. You can come in here and get a little booth. You give us a ton of money and you set up a booth, and then lots of people come in here and you can get those people to come through and see your booth and see your game. And Microsoft and Nintendo and Sony and every other like huge player was like, okay, or we could go across the street and rent out our own building or hotel or conference center, whatever, and do that. And then we don't have to pay you a ton of money. All of these people in here will just walk across the street and come to our thing. Easy. And that's what happened. And that's what killed E3, is that once these big corporate like players realized, oh, we can just do our own thing and we don't have to pay E3. Okay. And they all pulled out. And then the only people left within the small little bubbles were smaller games, which is the problem they had coming out of COVID, is that every big player pulled out and wanted to do their own thing. And at that point, there's no reason to have the conference, because all this would be is like mobile games and indie stuff and stuff that just doesn't really pull people in to the point where they fly out and buy tickets to the convention. And so they just had to shut down, because it's like, okay, so it's not going to be E3. It's going to be Indie Fest and Mobile Game Fest. And then all the big players will do their own thing that happens to be close by at the same time. And that's basically what Summer Game Fest turned into. Summer Game Fest is a show that Jeff does, and then he does a thing called Summer Play Days, which is like industry only. And so you have to be media to be invited to it, or a developer and something like that. And it's a meeting place like E3 used to be back in like the early 2000s, where there's not really big shows or anything, but that's where you get the chance to try games early. And it's interesting, you know. A booth was only like $1 million for a 4x4 spot. I don't know why no one showed up. So cheap. Yeah. Like, it worked when everybody came and the flood of people justified it. But nowadays, like, every big studio, every big publisher knows we can do our own thing. We can post a YouTube video and we'll get just as much exposure. Like, and it's frustrating because the in-person stuff is so cool. And as a kid, I always dreamed of going to E3. That's why I'm very thankful I got to go before it was gone and done. But it's probably just a piece of gaming history that's gone in the US, at least. Gamescom is still a thing. Destin, have you ever been to Gamescom? I don't know. Gamescom is apparently huge. Has anybody in chat ever been to Gamescom? Because Gamescom is only 12 times. Okay. Show off. Like, it's ridiculously huge. Dude, cosplay stage. There's something so cringe about that to me. Dude, that's so funny. All the dudes coming up to... Okay, that's funny. That's pretty funny. But like, this is Gamescom. This is what E3 used to be like. Horrifying crowds. Just social anxiety personified, okay? This, yeah, 335,000 attendees visited Gamescom 2024. 335,000 people in like a week. This is what E3 used to be like. So there is still sort of E3. It's just in Germany now instead of Los Angeles, which honestly is probably for the best. I mean, I still remember the like E3 complex. We went in and it's like, you know, big event center, and then they had these like stairs down the back, and they had like a security checkpoint over here before you go into the building. And we're going up through these stairs, and Matt Pat was actually going through security at the same time. I didn't realize he's like 3 feet tall. Okay, not actually 3 feet. He's very short. He's shorter than I thought. On camera, he looks normal, but he's like this tall. Like I could just hug him and surround him, envelop him. But he was going through security with his wife, and at the same time, like we said hi, he goes through, and I remember turning around, and there was like a highway overpass going like across here with the cars racing by, and then there's like a little bridge or a little walkway that goes underneath. And I remember turning around, and I remember seeing this, I don't know cars, but it was like Bugatti, Lamborghini, something like that. It was like a $250,000 car, okay? Like a $250,000 car. And it's driving through the underpass. And I just remember being like, wow, that is it. Whoever's driving that is loaded. And on all sides for this entire stretch was nothing but tents, trash, needles from using, you know, all manner of drugs. And it was the most clear-cut Night City-esque contrast of hyper wealth and luxury and abject squalor and poverty. And it was really jarring. Really, really jarring. Because you see this freakishly expensive car that's more expensive than... I mean, it's like the average person's amount of income for 5 or 6 years, but just in a car. Like, it's ridiculously expensive. And you see them driving past people who are literally sleeping under a highway underpass, laying in a bed of garbage they pulled out of the nearby trash can. And it was really bizarre to see. It was really, frankly, crazy. And for some reason, that has stuck with me more than some of the stuff I even saw on the show floor 5 years after the fact. I just can't shake that image. And it's... But that, in many ways, that's just Los Angeles. I mean, that's how, that's just LA.
Lord Shut is now a member.
It's weird.
I've been missing all the lives recently. Tired face. Baby, I missed you, Lukey Apu. Give me a life update from the past like 2 months, lol.
I'm glad you're back, my friend. I'm glad to see you. Big updates from last 2 months. I mean, what have been the biggest things in the last 2 months, going back to like September? It's been kind of slow, honestly. It's been a little slow. Yeah, I guess we got Space Marine. We had Veilguard. That's probably the other big thing. Some other various gaming news. Ubisoft launched an NFT project like 4 years too late. That was funny, with $295 million microtransactions, which was pretty funny. There's been some stuff. Destin, my first E3 was definitely a wake-up call. I made the mistake of walking a few blocks away from the Staples Center at night. Ooh, yeah. Oops. Yeah, it was really funny going to Summer Game Fest this year with Joraptor. Because Joraptor's from, like, the Netherlands, right? And the Netherlands are, I mean, you Google it. Look at the pictures that come up. Like, it's gorgeous. It's super clean. It's very well managed and well kept. And, dude, I asked him, like, do you want to come with us to a steakhouse? And he's like, sure, yeah. I just got to my hotel. I'll walk over and meet you at the steakhouse, or I'll meet you at your Airbnb, and we'll walk to the steakhouse. And so he walked like the 2 or 3 blocks it was, and he comes over, and dude looked like he had seen a ghost. I'm like, you good? We're about to walk over to the restaurant. And he's like, I just saw a guy peeing on the side of a building. And he's like, there's this homeless dude peeing, just kind of walking, swinging him. He's like, pretty scarred. And while we're like standing there in a little triangle along the side of the street, it's so funny. As we were standing there just on the side of the street, you know, it's like, you know, the streets here, our Airbnb is here, and the sidewalk goes this way. We're standing kind of in a triangle talking for a minute, and this homeless guy comes up to us and starts just standing like very close to us, rambling incoherently. I mean, no idea what he was saying, just, you know, on another planet. And we just kind of ignored him. We're all facing the center. And eventually he kind of waddled off. But we turned back around, and on the ground was a can of the soda Squirt. Just sat on the ground. He had like left us this can as a gift. I don't know why. Just left it on the ground as a peace offering or something. And we were just like, oh, okay. But it was very jarring. It was very, very jarring. And it was really, really funny to watch Jor react to Los Angeles. He's like, is it normal to have like this many homeless people just like hanging about? Like there's no social program. No. In LA, it's weirdly, it's considered like unsympathetic or mean or cruel to try to do something to help them. Like you're supposed to just kind of let these people who have like serious issues just kind of waddle around, and it's really sad. It's really sad. But for him, I'm sure especially, it was really jarring. But that's a lot of LA. LA is just like that. It's shockingly dirty. Take him to San Fran. Yeah. San Fran, you got to be really careful too. That has its own suite. Speaking of being careful, this is why you be careful before buying games. The digital deluxe of Suicide Squad this past week or so went on sale for 95% off. The $100 version of the game available for $5. Like that. It was sad to begin with. This hurts. This one I'm like, oh. I would love to know if they got a spike of players actually from this, because this looks like maybe the Epic Games Store. I wonder. So that was on the 21st. Let's see if there was like a spike of players. Nope. Like maybe a few, but even 95% off, it doesn't look like there was really a spike of players. It looks like the same number. Over the weekend, it goes up to like 150 and then it's back down. Dude, that's crazy. Even 95% off, people are like, nope, I'm good. The devs played it. Dude, that's the thing I told you guys about though. And then I swear to God, I'll move on. Let me see. Sony Bend. That's the studio. Bend Studio. They had a post. It would have been back like right around Concord time. Right here. On launch day. We're playing Concord with our friends on Ben Plays. Ben Studio. The Ben devs are taking to the galaxy and streaming it live right now. As part of team building, all these studios decided to play Concord at launch to support their sister studio. There's a very good chance that a solid chunk of the peak concurrence, whether they were playing on PC or PlayStation, I'm not sure, Probably PlayStation. But there's a good chunk of these players across their peaks that were probably just PlayStation employees. So whatever this number was, it's worse. And I remember seeing that, and at one point I just, oh wait, they're saying, oh man, oh no, it's somehow worse. And I'm sure it's similar with this. So anyway, it's a little sad. Let me see, where else was I? Rambling about has LGBTQ tag on Steam like Veilguard had. Yeah, I think they just check off all the boxes that they feel like they can. If you have characters that can do a romance that is like male, female, whatever, then they check that box. Like, am I wrong? I think even Baldur's Gate has that tag. I don't care. Whatever. Veilguard flopped because it was or I don't know if it flopped. But Veilguard did not do as well as it could have been, or could have done, to say the very least, because it just wasn't a very good game. That's the key reason. I don't know how much, like, what they expected to make from it. I don't think they really expected it to turn a profit after 6-ish years of development, but we'll see. I think they're banking a lot on Andromeda. Not Andromeda, on Mass Effect 5. Tomato. Is Veilguard not worth playing for the story? I was looking forward to it. It's just, like, it depends on what you want out of it. If you want just like an adventure game that is basically a friendship simulator with kind of cringy writing, solid. But it's not an RPG. There is no role to play. There is no real, like, difference in how it'll play out for you. The only thing that really changes is whether you've max leveled your companions by the final mission. That's the whole thing. Like, it's not really an RPG. And I was rooting for them. I wanted BioWare to have this big comeback, and in many ways they've overcome a lot of the challenges that they had with like Anthem and Andromeda, but like, you know, they're Veilguard, whatever you think about it, it is technologically and visually and graphically very, very impressive, and they polished the ever-living crap out of it, and that's awesome. But it's just clear that the BioWare that made those big games that people remember and love, that's not the same studio anymore. Veilguard has a story twist that doesn't hold up on inspection. Yeah, I won't be specific, but yeah, I didn't think it worked. Is Bethesda the same studio? I mean, even the same studio versus Starfield, it's fascinating because a lot of the people that worked on Starfield, the second bonuses paid out, they bailed, which I thought was funny. Like, even high-level people, like Will Shen, who worked on Starfield as the head head quest designer, director, whatever. He bailed the second bonuses went out. Okay, let's talk about this one real quick. I don't think this is enough for a full segment, but just so you know, a new Windows update, Windows 11 24H2, is apparently causing certain Ubisoft games specifically to brick. They get black screens while playing, and they also have trouble booting. They'll be unresponsive while launching, things like that. It affects Valhalla, Origins, Odyssey, Outlaws, Pandora, or Avatar, a bunch of those things. They have a temporary fix for Outlaws to prevent the game from failing to respond. After the update, however, players still may encounter performance issues, and they're working on a permafix. This is well above my pay grade. I have no idea what could have done this, but it seems to primarily be affecting just Ubisoft games. So there's something about this update that Ubisoft's code does not like. But what's also interesting is that, like, these are on different engines. So this is on the Snowdrop engine, and then these are all on Anvil, which is the Assassin's Creed engine. So they've got the same problem across two different engines. It's really weird. I don't know what that could possibly be, but it's not a bug. It's a feature by our friends at Microsoft. They're like, we're just going to help you guys out. You know, I'm going to help you out. Heard Avatar locks you out of the game unless you own the DLC. Oh, I haven't heard that. If that's the case, that's a funny bug. That's a little funny. But nah, this particular thing we're talking about is an update specifically through Windows that bricks this and causes these issues. Yeah, they might become unresponsive while starting. They yeah, to safeguard your Windows Update experience, we have applied a compatibility hold on devices with these games installed. These devices will not be offered to install this update for Windows. IT administrators using Windows for Business, blah, 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 blah. So they're, as part of like their Windows Update, now that they're aware of this, if you have these games installed on your system, they will not update your PC to that version. They'll hold it until there's like a fix, which... props to them. I didn't know they could do that, but apparently they can. They can check what you have installed on your system. That's kind of cool. So if you have any of these games installed currently, you should be okay. Keep them installed and they won't update you to the new one. Otherwise, it automatically installs and you got to deal with that. So there you go. Let's see. Zeke, thank you for the 524H2 is also causing blue screens with Western Digital drives, among many other issues. I'm glad to see Windows is doing well. That's maybe they should have put a little less effort into all of the Copilot stuff nobody's using. I don't know if Copilot's got, like, I don't really use Copilot. I don't think I've ever technically used it, but I do love me some of the Chat GPT stuff that they've got installed now. Like they have that Alt space bar. I don't have it installed on this user on this computer, but you can like hold down Alt and then press space bar and that pops up Chat GPT in case you need to translate something or look up something. Like super smooth. I use that all the time. I don't use Copilot, but anyway, I thought I'd tell you guys about that. That's interesting. Let me open that. Okay, I guess we can do this real quick while we're on the topic of Ubisoft, and then I'll catch up on this. Let's see. Orc, thank you for the sub over on Twitch. Thank you, my friend. Also, shout out to all of you guys over on Twitch. We hit our 21,000 follower goal over there. That's awesome. Thank you, thank you. Anchovy Slayer, thank you for the 200 bits. To be honest, I don't get all the drama. If everything else was exactly the same and it was standalone release, nobody would complain about it being there. It was a cool game and really fun. I have no problem with it getting recognized. I think you're talking about Shadow of the Air Tree. I think the point is, like, standalone games have a much bigger hill to climb than a big DLC for the biggest game of a certain year. And Game of the Year is an award meant to reward the risk takers and the most profound game that came out. And so seeing a DLC come along that doesn't really have to climb that marketing hurdle, that doesn't have to climb the release hurdle, that doesn't have all of those difficulties, and then it just waltzes in and gets it. Like, it throws a lot of wrenches into the engine. And I think, you know, last year, Phantom Liberty probably would have won if they had this policy back then. And that I don't think would be fair to some of these other games that did it. Because what was... Baldur's Gate took it, like, I guess it would have been competitive at the very least. Was it nominated? Or was this a brand new policy just for this year? I don't even remember. Last year is tricky because last year we had Zelda and Baldur's Gate. So, but Phantom Liberty was great. But even then, it just, to me, I think that there's just a really simple way that we can break this down, which is just Game of the Year is for games. DLC are not games. They are expansions and content for a game. So I don't think it qualifies. Like, just keep it simple. If they really care that much about winning Game of the Year, they should just spin it off as its own game. Even like AC Mirage started as a DLC and they spun it off into its own game. If it were a masterpiece, if it was like a 10 out of 10 game, I'd be fine with that being nominated for Game of the Year because it's a game. But when it's a DLC, like, it is by its very definition not a game. Like, it is an expansion for a game. It's not the game itself. Yeah, we really need a best DLC expansion category. That's what I don't understand. Like, that is the easiest of easy fixes for this whole thing. Just do that. Just do that. I don't understand why, like, we have to cater to the expansion so much. Like, I understand maybe the argument is that, well, so many people played it, so many people bought it, it would be unfair to, like, to do it that way. But, like, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't like it. I don't think it makes sense. Wrap it up. Yeah. Let's see. They forgot the BioWare formula. Extreme power fantasy with a mysterious lore that's not what it appears. Such as Mass Effect and Dragon Age, even KOTOR to an extent. I think they were trying to reinvent it for the sake of reinventing it, and I can appreciate them trying to do something fresh, but they lost a lot of what made Dragon Age Dragon Age. As you guys heard in that video I did with my wife, where she was like, it's not Dragon Age. There's not really any role play. There's not really any consequence. You can't really be evil. The most evil thing you can do in Dragon Age is leave a mayor who damned his entire city to death. You can leave him behind to be killed and corrupted. Or you can set him free and be like, yeah, do better next time. But even the bad choice in that instance is like probably the just choice. It's like, no, you killed an entire village, so we're not going to save you. Like, the most evil thing you can do in that game is still kind of like an understandable ethical choice. You know, like, it just, and after like Origins, where there's plenty of examples of like really, really messed up stuff that can happen in that game. It's frustrating. And again, like, when we talk about the bar being raised, like Baldur's Gate comes in and Baldur's Gate just casually lets you, like, if you've not seen, I won't spoil it, but like, if you've not seen some of the added evil cutscenes, evil ending cutscenes that they did for Baldur's Gate, the like full evil run, whatever horrible thing you can imagine, it's probably worse. Like, they let you just go all the way with power fantasy evil, like villain stuff. It's like, yeah, the Dark Urge. It's crazy. It's crazy. And I think after that, coming back to this is like really, really, it's jarring. But let me see what else we got. Brendan, think of that too. Ubisoft netcode and Windows Defender not playing nice. Oh, that makes sense if it's the netcode, because that would apply through both engines. I got you. That would totally make sense. Blake, think of that too. Where did the old BioWare devs go? They all left and made their own studios and went to work at other studios. I think there's a couple people at like Obsidian, a couple people that went to CDPR. Like, they're kind of scattered throughout the industry. Some of them retired, because a lot of those guys that made these big games back in like the early to mid 2000s, they're now like 50, 60 years old. A lot of them have also gone. Exodus, yeah, that's the big one, which... Exodus. Become the Traveler. It's a new AAA science fiction action adventure role-playing game franchise from Archetype Entertainment. So they're doing stuff. They're doing stuff. But this is what's happened a lot in the industry recently, where a lot of these big studios that have like evolved and shifted, a lot of those devs have left and are doing different things. And even like still very active studios have lost a lot of that core talent that's gotten bored. I mean, you could even look at something like Rocksteady, where the founders and a lot of the lead devs that made like Arkham Knight, Arkham City, they left and made their own studio. Or Ken Levine, the guy behind BioShock, he left that studio, made a new studio that's not working on BioShock. They're doing Judas, which seems to carry a lot of the same DNA. And then there's also a different team at Take-Two that's working on BioShock. I forget what the studio's called, but the industry does this a lot. People shuffle around. Yeah, Judas, that's one of the, like, for some reason, very forgettable games. I anticipate, the more I think about it, the more I feel Judas is going to be one of those death loop games. I think it's going to be kind of cool. It's going to be clever. It's going to have a solid gimmick. I think when you really start to push it and break it apart, you can probably see how it works pretty quickly and the magic will kind of dissipate. But I think it'll be solid. I think that's going to be one of those games that some people give a 10 out of 10 and it's like, it's the best game that's ever made. And other people are going to be like, it's fine, but the gimmick falls flat for me. And I think that that's how it's going to go. I mean, whenever, like, for Deathloop, it was all about the sort of time mechanic and going back through, trying to find the optimum path based on new information and stuff. An interesting gimmick, to be sure, and mixing like real world multiplayer with the in-game single player stuff. Like, it was a cool idea, but the gimmick kind of wears thin. And with Judas, I anticipate the gimmick wearing thin in a similar amount of time. But I'd love to be wrong. I'd love for it to be a 10 out of 10. But whenever a game is built on like a single gimmick, which in this case is the narrative Lego blocks that he talks about, usually gimmick-based games don't hold up over like 15, 20 hours. Even like 10 to 15 is really stretching it. Oh God, I just joined and thought there was a man standing behind you. There is. He's always with us. Let's see. Anchovy, thank you again for the bits. That's fair. It's just disappointing to me how these Game of the Year things are supposed to be about celebrating all the good stuff from the year, but all everyone is mainly talking about is the drama, the nominations, and woke politics stuff. Gaming feels so negative these days. Yeah, I agree. I think we all are guilty of getting caught up in the minutia of the topics and these discussions where we just, you know, we feel passionately about something and we'll critique it. But part of it also is like, it takes 5 seconds to say you like something. It takes a minute to describe how and why you don't like something. And so the negative or the critical side tends to expand and take up a lot of the discourse. That certainly happens. But I think it's also like this happens every 4 years. People forget, but it happens every 4 years, especially because a lot of gaming discourse starts and is kind of cultivated within the US, at least the ones I'm familiar with, because I speak English. So a lot of it is English based. A lot of the discourse tends to get much more heightened and dramatic around elections. It just does. Like, it just does. Every 4 years, it's like this. Gaming discourse in 2016 was super toxic. 2020 was weird because it was, of course, COVID, and it was just a very weird time. But every 4 years, it kind of gets back into this trench. And so it's going to wear off over the next like 6 months. People are going to chill out more. And those, there's a lot of like political content creators that started talking about gaming stuff, even though they don't play games. They're not gamers. It was the thing to talk about. And they're going to eventually move on and they'll start talking about something else, or they'll get bored and give up once the views dry up. Now the election's over. So that type of thing, it happens. It happens. But, and then 4 years, we can look forward to it happening all over again. Cheers. Buckle up. Let's talk about this one. I think I caught up on all that. Okay. Thank you guys for all the super chats and stuff and follows and subs. You've been very generous today. Okay. Let's see. We've all been corrected. Oh, sorry. New segment. There is a correction that IGN has put out. It's not really totally a correction. It's like it's basically them coming out and saying that, okay, let me try this again. Okay. IGN has come out with an article trying to debunk a story that's going around. What's strange about it is that it's not really a debunk. It's interesting. So basically there was a story that came out. There was some data mined information that found some old monetization stuff for AC Shadows. We talked about it on the live channel. I said at the time, just like has been rumored and discussed kind of behind the scenes for like a year now. We've known that the Animus Hub, which is what's the Assassin's Creed Infinity platform is being called, that was going to feature all sorts of different things, such as the modern day storyline that will all be there. It won't be implemented into the game. So no more like running through a mission, do something cool, cut to Layla doing something stupid. None of that. It's all going to be in the Animus Hub now separate. But also, they're going to have systems in place to try and encourage you to keep coming back, to try and encourage you to keep playing the game, keep spending money on the game, blah, blah, blah. One of the ways they're doing that is with battle passes, as they're colloquially known, which are basically just a long series of tasks, whether it's leveled up through XP or by specific challenges. You get 5 assassinations while in the shadows, or you do 3 assassinations while using a smoke bomb or whatever it might be. However they choose to level it. It's a pass. As you reach certain levels, you unlock new cosmetics or crafting materials, stuff like that. That's been rumored for ages. That's been the expectation. Since the delay of Shadows, the understanding has been that Ubisoft completely revamped how the game is being monetized, and those paid battle passes have been shifted to free battle passes. So they will be included just kind of as a weekly update or a monthly update for the big one. And they will offer rewards to players, but you will not pay to get access to those rewards. That's been the understanding and the expectation coming out of these leaks. Where some of the miscommunication came from is in some of this data mine stuff, there was verbiage that suggested that these were paid, like paid battle passes. And part of the reason for that is because, of course, AC Shadows was supposed to be out like now, which is kind of crazy to think about, but it was originally announced for release on November 15th. That means it would have been out for over a week at this point today. As a result, there were a lot of things within the code of like the Ubisoft store backend and stuff that was for that original release that was overlooked when they were updating everything for the new February release date. And in some of that information was verbiage that suggested that some of these passes were going to be paid. But again, that was before the delay. That was before the lackluster launch of Star Wars Outlaws. That was before all of that stuff that made Ubisoft go, oh God, we got to do something different, okay? So this article from IGN basically says, no, Assassin's Creed Shadows isn't getting a battle pass. What? Were the leaks wrong? Not really. Ubisoft has clarified that AC Shadows isn't getting a battle pass amid rumors that the Animus Hub, the rebranded AC Infinity, set to house all future games in the franchise, will feature paid content. This is this is okay, well, I'll come back to it. The Animus Hub team posted on the AC subreddit to correct leaks claiming the hub would contain paid rewards for AC Shadows, leading many to believe a Battle Pass style system was being implemented. Quote, it has come to our attention that inaccurate rumors have been circulating online regarding the upcoming Animus Hub, codenamed Infinity. We wanted to take this occasion to clarify that all the rewards available in the Animus Hub will be entirely free. The post went on to clarify there will be no paid subscriptions or paid battle passes featured in the Animus Hub. Players will have access to regular content and missions at no extra cost. So IGN takes this and runs with the article saying that they're not doing any of that paid stuff. The operative word in this that I see is paid or paid battle passes. There will be no paid battle passes. It does not say there will not be battle passes, because there will be. They're going to call them something else. They won't be called battle passes. I believe they call them projects. I think that was the leaked name that they said. It was projects.
Oliver Montemayor is now a member.
Oliver, thank you, my friend. So every week you'll get like a project, which is a series of challenges to unlock some cosmetic or crafting materials, whatever. I think originally the projects would have been free, but the larger battle pass, again, it's the colloquial term. That's just what we call it. They will call it something else. They're not going to call it the AC Shadows Battle Pass. They're not going to do something like that. It's going to be a different thing. But that is effectively how it will function, is in that same way. And again, right now, that's the goal. But it seems pretty obvious that there was, not that long ago, a plan to monetize that. And thankfully, in the face of Shadows, or in the face of Outlaws, rather, they have reevaluated, because I think that would have gone over quite horribly. And I've been saying that at this point for like a year and a half since this first started leaking. And that's why for me, like me and Jor and those guys, we talk about AC a lot. We talk about Ubisoft stuff a lot. This has all been rumored and leaked for ages. So none of this is particularly shocking. It's why, like, when I saw Yasuke as a playable character, I was like, yep, this leaked back in like 2021. It's like we've known this for a very long time. For a lot of other people, it was brand new. They hadn't heard anything about it. But for us, we were like, yeah, no, like we knew this. So it wasn't that shocking. But they go on. Ubisoft is also ditching its main paid content model for releasing Season Pass with 2 main paid expansion drops in the year after launch. The faux early access period that sees publishers charge players more to play on the actual release date instead of 3 days later has also been scrapped. Releasing myriad pieces of DLC for free will perhaps bring in some AC fans back on side in what's otherwise been a particularly rough pre-launch campaign for Ubisoft. And then they describe the frustration with inaccuracies in the game's depiction of Japan, where they issued an apology after to say the game is not intended to be a factual representation of history, but instead a compelling historical fiction. This is despite art director Thierry Dansereau telling IGN that Ubisoft looked to make Shadows as authentic as possible to match historical events just 2 months prior. This has been the whole thing, is like they started pitching Shadows as like their attempt at the most historically accurate Assassin's Creed game ever. And then like real quick, they pivoted off of that once people started expressing frustration, to use their term, with Yasuke and some of the historical massaging that was going on with that. And so I just think it's been very confused, their approach to this. I think they thought they could just say, hey, it's the most historically accurate game ever, and people would just be like, okay, sounds good. But they were met with some frustration, let's say, to again use their term. But with this, I mean, they go on other controversies. It's kind of crazy how many there are with this game. Like all of this in the article is just discussions of things that have gone wrong with this launch. It's a little wild, but all of this to say, the more you read all this, all the rewards available in the Animus Hub will be entirely free. Cool. That's cool. It's rewards is how they phrase it. But this, again, I just hear this as a way of phrasing it where the rewards available in the Animus Hub will be entirely free. The rewards will be. It doesn't say there won't be a shop. It says the rewards for activities will be free. But that's still, like, I still see that including a shop. Which, whatever. Like, I don't think that's a end-all, be-all. But, again, it's very carefully worded. No paid subs or battle passes. Doesn't say there won't be free ones. Players will have access to regular content and missions at no cost. That I like. That's good. I like that. I think at one time, Jonathan, the French YouTuber who has sources within Ubisoft, he did a leak where he suggested that there was going to be a paid subscription. That's part of what these leaks alleged, because I think they saw the old version of it where those were rumored and where they were experimenting with it. I think there was at one time a plan, or at least an exploration, to do a paid subscription for like $5 or $10 a month. And their goal was to have content and missions related to that subscription included. So if you paid $5, you got new missions every month if you wanted to keep playing the game forever. And then after all this stuff, they decided to pivot away from that, cut the paid subscription, cut the paid battle passes, and make all those missions they probably were already making, just include them for free. I think that's what happened. I do not believe for a second that this was always the plan, because all of the leaks up until like a month and a half, 2 months ago, were saying that all this was going to be paid for. And after the delay, after we know there was a shift in how they approached the premium edition, early access, the pricing of the season pass, all of that stuff, after all those changes were made, it also comes out that no, the old leaks were wrong. So I think a pivot was made, and I'm glad the pivot was made. This was a good pivot. Let me be very clear. Credit where credit is due. I am glad they decided to get rid of paid battle passes in a single player game. I'm glad they decided to pivot away from a paid subscription in a single player game. I think those are good choices that they've made. Is it enough to save the game or whatever? Time will tell, but I do think those are good moves to make, but they need to do more than just make the pivot, a few months before launch. This needs to be a company-wide shift. And at the same time they're doing this, they're launching an NFT game that I'm not kidding, has a $295 million mini for sale in their shop. It's being sold by a player, but still, like, it kind of makes you question whether they've actually had like this realization that they want to do what's pro-consumer, or if they're just doing this because they were worried about the blowback. And I think we all know the answer. The second that they get the chance to monetize it in that way, they'll no doubt try. And I think that's, again, why people are kind of fed up with all this, because they're like, you're not doing this because you get it. You're doing this because you got caught. And if you continue doing this for years and you have a very pro-consumer approach for the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, okay, then you'll win back a lot of that goodwill and people will start to be more positive towards Ubisoft. But I think everybody knows that the second they could get away with a paid subscription for an Assassin's Creed game, they'll do it. And I think that's the problem. Okay. But anyway, this whole, to just wrap this up, the article is weird because it very confidently says it's not getting a battle pass, but the phrasing that they quote directly says they will not have a paid battle pass. They don't say no battle pass, they say paid battle pass. It's going to have battle passes, at least that's what we call them, but they're going to call them projects or whatever the final name is. It's going to have systems designed to keep players engaged, grinding out content in the long term. Does that mean the game will be bad? No, not necessarily. But this title doesn't make any sense to me because this isn't what they confirmed. It's getting a paid battle pass. Then the title is correct in this article. Otherwise, this article is just, it seems to be factually wrong, or at the very least, it's making a claim it can't substantiate. They didn't say it will not be getting a battle pass. It said it will not be getting a paid battle pass. So, IGN, fix your shit. Destin, maybe send an email. Let's do it. Okay. What else we got? What else we got? Brandon, thank you for that. 5. I know I'm going to get some hate, but I have a feeling that AC Shadows is going to be the best out of the modern AC games, but won't outsell Valhalla. Yeah, I don't think it'll outsell Valhalla because Valhalla came out during like the COVID era, and that was just a very easy time to sell lots of copies because everybody was at home a lot. So I don't think it'll outsell Valhalla. I do think it'll probably outsell Odyssey. Especially long term, and Origins. I don't remember how Origins did, frankly. But I think it'll probably do better than Odyssey. But I do think you'll see basically no big YouTubers doing a lot of coverage on it just because they don't want to juggle the hot potato. They don't want to deal with it. Like, I'm good. I'm good. Edwin, thank you for the 5. AC Shadows delay proves that the best time to get an AC game is months after release. It shows a lack of consideration for players who buy day one. Yeah, I thought that interview with Yves Guillemot was, or the statement he put out was very, it was a memo. Was it a memo? No, it was the investor call. That's what it is. It took me a while to get there, but it was an investor call. And it was really interesting because he just like openly admitted we typically launch our games with some small frictions, and those small frictions we usually iron out as we like get months after launch. Now we can't do that anymore. And, you know, I think the age-old problem for Ubisoft has been that they look at other companies and they say, that company got away with it, why can't we? And it's like, because you're not that other company. These other companies might have more goodwill, or their players are more conditioned to do this type of thing. Ubisoft's just different. Like, people come at Ubisoft and hold them to a high standard. And I think it's because there was a time, I know it might be shocking, there was a time where Ubisoft was casually dropping some of the biggest and most critically acclaimed games each and every year. Like, they were doing very, very well. Like, back in that like, especially AC2 era, Ubisoft used to be on that level, and people remember that. And that's why where they are now is so frustrating, because now it's just about maximizing the bottom line. End all be all. But let's look at a good story. Let's look at a good story. You ready? You ready? No? Okay, we'll talk about more bad stuff. Okay, you ready? Okay. New segment. Enough negativity, says I. Let's talk about something very impressive. Dare I say good in the industry right now. Because we get bogged down in the negativity. We get bogged down in the discussions of what's bad, what sucks, and all that. And it's just frankly too bad. And it's important every once in a while to look at something solid, something encouraging, right? Something encouraging. Let's do that now. Larian. They lost a crap ton of money in 2022. But in 2023, they raked in a whopping $260 million in profit on the back of Baldur's Gate 3. $260 million. To be exact, $259,891,260. Booyah. Booyah. And this is profit, okay? That's not revenue. This is profit. The Irish Independent, users may encounter a paywall if you try to read it, has reported that Larian has posted a 249 million euro pre-tax profit for 2023. That's almost 260 million freedom dollar dues for those of us without adequate digital privacy protections. The runaway success of Baldur's Gate 3 saw Larian increase its overall revenue almost 20-fold from 2022. I mean, that doesn't shock me because they didn't have a game in 2022, so you would hope that it was a huge improvement, but still. The figures were posted by Larian's Dublin-based holding company, though still primarily headquartered in Gent. Is it Gent or Ghent? Belgium. I don't actually know. Somebody in chat tell me. The Independent reports that Larian runs its revenue through its Dublin office, which also houses much of the studio's writing team. Favorable Irish tax laws have seen a number of corporations base their European and worldwide headquarters in Ireland. Yeah, doesn't Ireland not have like corporate tax? Is that what it is? Is that what it is? I can ask Grok. Hold on. Does... Oh, now the website's locked up. No! My PC's frozen. Hold on. This is what I get for trying to ask a question. Crap. It broke the computer. Hold on. Are we back? We're back. Okay. Okay, let's try this. Does Ireland have a corporate tax? Let's see. It has a corporate tax of 12.5% for trading income, which has been a significant aspect of Ireland's economic policy to attract foreign and direct investment. However, there's a higher rate of 25% for non-trading or passive income like dividends from non-resident companies, interest, rents, royalties. Additionally, Ireland has implemented a global minimum effective tax rate of 15% for large multinational corporations under the OECD's Pillar 2 rules starting from 2024, which applies to companies with global revenues of more than 750 million euros. This applies to a small subset of companies, while also the majority continue to pay the 12.5% tax rate. How's that compare to Belgium's tax rate for corps? Because that's where the rest of their studio is. Let's see. Their standard is at 25%. Ooh, baby. However, Belgium offers a reduced rate of 20% for small and medium-sized enterprises. The first 100,000 euros of taxable income they provide, meeting certain expectations. Okay, so this is why they moved to, they do all of their finance through Ireland. Checks out. That's very smart. That's very, very smart. It's the same reason people ask, one of the questions people ask is if you look up a lot of corporations in the US, there's a lot of them, until somewhat recently, that run through Delaware. A lot of US corporations are based in Delaware, and that's because the case law, where there's been a lot of lawsuits and stuff, where the courts have judged which way they favor corporations versus the individual suing and stuff. In Delaware, there's a ton of case law that favors corporations, and so a lot of corporations, even though they might be headquartered in California or Florida or Texas or New York, they will incorporate and be based legally out of Delaware. So if any lawsuits are brought, they use the case law in Delaware for the lawsuits to help them out there. So this is a very common thing where companies will base themselves in different places because it saves them so much money. I mean, literally cutting their tax rate in half just by funneling the money through their Ireland office. Brilliant. Brilliant. Love to see it. As a guy with a degree in corporate finance, I eat this stuff up, man. I love it. Larian brought in 427 million euros, 446 million US dollars in overall revenue last year, with the Independent citing 15 million copies sold of Baldur's Gate 3. Though Larian itself hasn't released precise sales numbers. In December of last year, Steam Spy estimated there were 20 million owners of the game on Steam alone. They tend to overestimate a lot. Concord, they got it wrong probably by double. So being off by, 30%, that's fine. 25, 30%, whatever. While Larian publishing director Michael Dowse referred to Baldur's Gate 3 having, quote, way over 10 million players in February of this year, for its part, Dungeons & Dragons owner Hasbro took home a tidy $90 million in revenue for Baldur's Gate 3. 90 million, and they took in 446 billion. Is this technically before or after? Digital Simi were actually up 10%, 31, 19% down. Yeah, because Wizards of the Coast is like one of the most toxic companies ever. I've told you guys how toxic they are. If you've never seen D&D Beyond, it's so stupid how they do this. If you've ever tried to run a D&D campaign, you would think like, oh, I want to just make a character and then run it through their website to have all the items and stuff. No, like you have to buy each of these books, which are physical books. You have to buy them each digitally to get access to it. If you want to build like, I'm trying to think of an example, like a more niche subclass or use certain weaponry or use this potion, it has to be in one of the books you own. If you bought the player's handbook, the DM's handbook and that stuff, and you want to use a single enemy or a single item that was in the Grim Hollow player pack or whatever, you have to buy that. Otherwise it doesn't show up in your inventory. And you can't just buy the one thing. It used to be you could pay $2 and get just the one thing you needed. Now you have to buy the entire damn book. It's so stupid. Like the entire thing is so over monetized. I'm not surprised their money's drying up because nobody's buying it anymore. It's insane. But anyway, that's Hasbro. That's Wizards of the Coast. That's why honestly I'm not too worried about Larian pivoting off of the D&D franchise because I'm sure they would have just been pressured to monetize it even more. This is all in contrast with a pretty quiet year for Larian in 2022. The company reported $22.7 million or $24 million in overall revenue. Larian actually had operating costs at $214,000 or $223,000 loss. So they actually lost some money. It's a pretty stark reminder of how volatile the business of games can be, with developers having to spend a great deal of money over a long period of time before hopefully making it up, and then some with a successful launch. Yeah, this is the big thing, is that like it's why subscription services get executives in the gaming industry so rock hard. It's because traditionally the games industry works where you are operating, let's say this is like the break-even line, okay? Typically companies operate at a loss and you hope that their game releases and there's a huge spike in profits, and then they develop and they drain those accounts, they lose some money, and then they release another game, make tons of money, hopefully it goes up even higher. So maybe it's like you're at a loss when you first found the company, you go up here, you lose some money while you're developing, you spike, and then you just get to the point where you eventually have tons of money in your coffers because you're making more with each release than you spent on the development. But getting out of this pit is tough. For Larian, I mean, 2022, they were in that unprofitable sector. They're losing money each year, and then they spike up with Baldur's Gate making tons of money. And now they have enough time that they can really do whatever they need to do and they'll be okay. But that's just how video games work. Subscription models are great though, because it pretty much is like this. There's no spikes when you have a big success. Like say Indiana Jones pops off and for Game Pass, it's the biggest release of the year somehow. And it's like, this is the greatest game ever. This is amazing. Look out, GTA 6. There's a new standard bearer. Who would have thought? Like, let's say it's a magical experience and it's amazing. There still wouldn't really be a spike. There might be like a little bump when it comes out on PS5, but that's about it. Whereas with this, like there's big spikes, but it's high risk, high reward. You take the risk of losing lots of money, but you get a huge spike of cash. Whereas here, every year it's going to be consistent, maybe little fluctuations here and there, but it's going to be pretty much the same. And that's why executives love it, because it's much, much safer and easier to expand and do stuff when you don't have to worry about it. In Game & Terry's 2018 documentary on Divinity Original Sin, Sven Vinke, Larian and Larian employees spoke at length about their wilderness years of being an independent RPG studio in the 2000s. Larian went through several lean periods, suffering layoffs and contracting on educational games before finding stability with the Kickstarter and sales success of Original Sin 1. But those days are long gone. Larian's building quite the war chest for its development of 2 yet-to-be-announced RPG projects. It also remains an independent studio, the largest of its kind, with perhaps Valve as the only other comparable example in history. Though Tencent is a major investor and minority shareholder in the company, founder and Baldur's Gate 3 director Sven Vinke is still owner and CEO. In a piece shortly before BG3's release, Jason Schreier credited Larian's continued flourishing in the face of the industry layoff crisis to the company's independence and Vinky's leadership, absent the competing incentives imposed by a publicly traded company, publicly traded company's many shareholders. Larian and Vink's main financial constraint becomes just making payroll, not making a line go up, which is the key. Like, corporations, they have to make line go up. They have to increase, which is why you can't ever just keep doing what you're doing. Todd, for example, makes Skyrim, pops off, really good. You can't just leave it there, though. Line must go up for the private owners who were preparing to sell the company, we know now. And so for years throughout the 2000s, it was like, just make a good game, make it profitable, we'll make some money, everybody wins. That's when it's privately held. That works. But when they started trying to shop around ZeniMax and being like, hey, how can we sell this to a big company for billions? We got to make lines go up, get those numbers up. And so Todd has to go and do Fallout 76 and these other things. And you're like, why did you do that? You were doing great before. Why are we doing this now? And it's because line needed to go up. And that's how ultimately it works. That's why privately held companies can often retain some of that creative integrity, let's say, that shocker people like. So props to Larian. I think it's great to see them doing so well. They do have 2 projects in the works. Neither of them are Baldur's Gate related. None of them are D&D related. They are doing some new IP from scratch. And or not necessarily new IP. We don't know that for sure, but it's suspected perhaps a new IP. They're working on 2 projects. We're going to find out about them eventually, but they're going to take their time. And now we know they definitely have the money to do what they got to do, which is awesome. Booyah. Nick, thank you for the 5. If Splinter Cell Remake gets canceled and the hopes of getting Chaos Theory Remake are gone, I will never buy a game from them again. I do declare. I mean, the Splinter Cell remake has been in the works for ages. There's another Ubisoft project. We touched on this a couple weeks ago, but just I had it pulled up in another tab. Ubisoft's Project U is back to the drawing board after 5 years of development. 5 years. This was this, like, did they ever show gameplay of it? It's running on the Godot engine. Oh, they struck it. Yeah, its unity is apparently crucial in this session-based co-op shooter where many players unite to prevail against an overwhelming threat. They had a closed play test in October of 2022, but I mean, again, it didn't go anywhere, and now they are basically scrapping everything they did and restarting. 5 years. 5 years. They said the PvE games can still be successful, citing viral launch of Helldivers 2, which sold an estimated 1 million units in its first 5 weeks. As such, it said that Ubisoft still believes in the project and moved Project U back into the incubation with a new producer and small team to explore new ideas. However, after over 5 years of development, current and past project developers tell me it's difficult to see how the game would succeed. 5 years, dude. And they're just like, never mind. Rework it. I understand it's real hard. It's real hard to make a live service game pop off. I just cannot fathom spending 5 years working on something only to be like, I'm good. Let's restart. It's crazy to me. It's crazy. Because that represents so many millions of dollars. Like, it's wild. How do you get a live service game to pop off, though? I mean, it has to be typically innovative. It has to have something that no other game has. It has to launch at the perfect time. It has to connect with content creators who want to make content for it. And ultimately, like, content creators also don't really know what they want until they see it. And that's the thing. Nobody really thought, and this was one I had very wrong. I didn't think Helldivers 2 looked like it was going to be particularly interesting. I was like, yeah, I remember saying, I think some people will enjoy it. It doesn't look like it's for me, though. And then I played it at launch. I was like, oh, I get it. This is great. You know, and it clicked. But I didn't know what I wanted until I actually got my hands on it and I saw it. And the problem with a lot of these companies is that they're trying now very early on to get content creators and streamers and stuff to talk with them and be like, what would you want out of this? And I think it's the flip side of designing games by focus group, because it's basically the same thing, but instead of players, it's the content creators. And I think ultimately people just don't know what they want until you show it to them. You have to have a visionary. You have to have somebody that is like, no, you want this. This is going to be amazing. I have this idea for a game. It's going to be awesome. Here you go. That's what it's going to take. Like, stop trying to cater to me. Give me something that you believe in and are passionate about. And if it's good, I'll connect with it. You know, like, don't try to build something for me. Don't try to do that where you're just trying to like check off whatever boxes you think will appeal to me. Make a solid game you believe in and that you actually are passionate about, you know? Because even games, like, some people might be like, well, isn't that the opposite of what you want? No, like, when you're trying to appeal to certain people based on their identity or what checkboxes you think are associated with them, you end up with these kind of pandering games like a Saints Row reboot, where it's like, you can tell they thought, our demographics look like this. Our expected player base is in this age range. What are most common things with those people? Oh, student loans. Let's make our characters have student loans. Oh, they're frustrated because they can't afford houses. Let's make these characters talk about how they can't afford a house and they have to all live together as roommates. You can tell that that's what happened. Like, that's what they were trying to do. But it didn't work because, again, they were just trying to pander to the audience. Stop trying to pander. Just make a good game. You know, like, just make a good game. It's really not that complicated. Really, really quite simple, dare I say. Thoughts on Balatro being the first non-narrative focused game to break the mold and be nominated for Game of the Year? Racing and fighting games still have never been nominated for Game of the Year. Yeah, my stance on that, I mentioned it earlier, Bobby. It's pretty straightforward. Even in their own phrasing of the category, they say, recognizing a game that delivers the absolute best experience across all creative and technical fields. This is I love Balatro. I think Balatro is great. It's all I can think about. I'm addicted, and this is my cry for help. But it doesn't really excel across all creative and technical fields. It's not, you know, a graphical powerhouse, certainly. It's not a narrative powerhouse. It doesn't do any of that stuff particularly well. And even some of these others, like Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, excels at pretty much all of those. If anything, you'd say its shortcoming is its pacing or how it was marketed and stuff. Metaphor, really solid. It's exceptional narratively and in terms of like combat and the kind of action RPG element of building out your characters and your team. Graphically, not really a powerhouse, certainly. Artistically, yes. But it's running on basically an engine that ran the PS3 version of Persona 5, so that's not crazy. But I think this is the key. Like, Balatro doesn't demonstrate and deliver the absolute best experience across all creative and technical fields. Some of them it does extremely well, but it doesn't perform across all of them. And that's my frustration with Balatro as somebody that loves Balatro. I don't think it should be in this category. I don't think Astrobot should probably be in this category. I understand why it's there, and I understand why some people would nominate it for this. But I just think of Game of the Year as something that wears all of those hats and does it extremely well. That's why games like Elden Ring or games like God of War or Red Dead 2 or whatever, Breath of the Wild or It Takes Two. That's why those games are such easy W's for Game of the Year, because they really do wear all of those hats at the same time and make it look easy. So that's my point. Let's see. Hi Lo-Fi, thank you for that 10, very generous. Hey Lucille, hi. Just wondering if you heard about Rocksteady potentially doing a remake of Arkham Asylum. Love your content, by the way, lol. We know that they've pitched something. So the Jason Schreier Schreier. Jason Schreier. Here it is. Hold on, let me pull up the archive. No, not that one. This. Boop. Boop. Voila. Here we go. Archive.today is goated. So at the very bottom of this article that Jason Schreier wrote back in June, he says, let's see. Yeah. In February 2024, Rocksteady released Suicide Squad. Employees were hopeful that players might enjoy individual pieces, such as its beautiful graphics or clever banter, but critics panned the overall experience, ranking it alongside other live service flops with a 60 out of 100 on Metacritic. The game failed to reach a wider audience despite pricey marketing campaign that included network TV commercials. I don't understand why people still do this. Like, who watches TV? Like, seriously, do any of you guys have cable subscriptions? Like, where you see this? I don't know. I literally don't know a single person who has cable anymore. Like streaming services, yeah, but I don't know anybody who has a cable subscription. Taylor does, or knows somebody. Not anymore. Not since like 2004. I have satellite TV. Okay. Yes for the news. Don't make fun of me. I can't tell if you're being sarcastic. Sarcasm. Internet is bundled with TV in Germany. Oh, interesting. Oh, they try to get me to bundle all my internet service with that and with landline telephones. This is the real question. Do you know anybody with a landline telephone anymore? Like, my internet company is so crappy. How crappy are they? They're trying to get me to get a lower price on my internet to sign up for a landline telephone, like at my kitchen wall. My office, you see that? That makes sense though. Office numbers, office phones, that's fine. I mean like at your house. Like those old 1990s things where like it's the little standalone phone that you put in the little charging dock. Like, I don't know anybody who does that. In Europe, yes, it's popular. Landline phones are hip as fuck. Yeah, is that what we're bringing back? Make landlines cool again. Anyway, we were talking about this. Despite the painful setback, Warner Brothers isn't giving up on video games, a $262 billion global industry, according to PwC, that will grow to $312 billion in 2027. During the February meeting in London, Haddad said Warner Brothers Games was looking to do more collaboration between its dozen studios and that the company was understaffed compared to competing publishers, so job cuts at Rocksteady wouldn't make sense. Many of the studio's employees are now helping to develop a new director's cut version of Hogwarts Legacy. At the same time, according to people familiar, the studio leaders are looking to pitch a new single-player game which would return Rocksteady to its roots. This is the key. We know that they were pitching a new single-player game. They might be doing a remaster or remake or whatever of Arkham Asylum to kind of get their feet back under them. That's possible. Maybe that's what they pitched. I would hope they did something totally wacky and different, because I think if they are going to compare themselves or be compared back to what the Rocksteady of old did, it's not going to go too well, because a lot of that core talent left Rocksteady with Sefton Hill and Jamie Walker to found a new studio. Sefton Hill new studio. Yeah. Reportedly developing single-player action-adventure game for Microsoft. Xbox is financing and publishing it. So the next game from the guys that did Arkham Knight and Arkham City and Arkham Asylum, the next game from them is going to be a Game Pass, like, exclusive for a month and a half until it comes to PlayStation. But still. Mortal Kombat devs are worried about Warner Brothers merger or just selling them. Yeah. I think that's fair. I don't blame them for being worried about that. But Warner Brothers has like nothing good going for them right now. So I can't say I'm too surprised. Like the one upside is that some investment firms have started to buy up shares and stuff. There's, strangely enough, there's net income lost close to $10 billion. This was when they did their evaluation of like lost goodwill and stuff. Like, everyone hates us. Run for the hills. Like, they've been hemorrhaging. I don't know how Zaslav still has a job, frankly. I'm shocked. But yeah, the whole thing is a disaster. Like, when you go back 5 years, it really makes it look painful. This is when everybody thought that HBO Max was going to be the next big thing, like the next Netflix. And then people are like, oh, wait, no, never mind. Never mind. We're good. We're good. Never mind. Big nope on that one. Let's see. Why is the Todd getting closer and closer? Because he's always with us. Todd doesn't just give up on you. Todd stays close. Todd cares. He cares. Max will take off for the new Harry Potter show in 2026. If it's good. Which it might be. It might be. I'm kind of braced for them to just be like retconning crap all over the place. But we'll see. They did allude that they're going to have tie-ins to Hogwarts Legacy's sequel and the show. Which kind of begs the question if the sequel is going to be like in the core timeline of Harry Potter. Like, I think it could be interesting if they added to the canon. Like, imagine if you're playing as a student going to school around the same time as Harry, and like you're going through similar quest lines and stuff while Harry and Hermione and Ron are running around doing stuff, and you get to see the movies play out basically from a different perspective. That could be cool. It would be a nightmare to write, but could be interesting. But there's lots of stuff they could do. I'm interested. Dragon Hendricks, thank you for that. I found out about you from your Starfield criticisms pre-launch. I was drinking the Kool-Aid. You were right from the jump. Starfield broke my BGS fandom. Dude, it's like it's like a Todd derangement syndrome or something on the flip side, like reversed from how people use the term nowadays, where people get like they drink the Kool-Aid. So maybe it's Todd sycophantic syndrome or Todd fanboy syndrome or something, where people just, they drink the Kool-Aid and they refuse to see what's pretty apparent. And then they get snapped out of it. You know, they no longer have the spell cast over them, you know. That's kind of how it works. But that's why, like, I got a lot of flack. I had videos getting like mass downvoted in the lead up to Starfield's launch. And then Starfield launched. That kind of settled. And after like a week or two, as people finished the game, I started seeing huge spikes in subs. Because people like played the game, were like, damn it, Luke was right. And they came over and subbed and were like, okay, yeah. So maybe there's something to thinking skeptically about things. And so it ended up working out, you know, which is funny. But I'm very glad you're here, Dragon. And you know, it can sometimes make games feel less thrilling, but that's the thing. Like, I have this video we're about to publish on Indiana Jones, probably later today, assuming that there's nothing crazy in this deep dive podcast thing. But in that, like, the IGN article just glazes Indiana Jones through and through. Like, it's just all about how solid it is, how exciting it is, and all of that. But they didn't call out anything strange. They didn't call out anything bizarre. They just said it was great and there's nothing concerning. But there is what's fascinating is that there is there was an article posted by a website called Maristation, which is a Spanish website. And they come out and they said something similar to what PC Gamer said in their impressions. So this is the impressions. When translated, they said, quote, "The second more serious issue with the game is the AI, or artificial intelligence, which needs significant improvement from what we saw in both stealth and combat. It's noticeable that enemy behavior requires refinement, as sometimes they act erratically." And from PC Gamer also comes out and is like, it's just a basic stealth game. Like, action feels limited. They also describe it's rarely a mission ender. Guards seemed happy to have a quick fist fight with you rather than running off to raise the alarm using the simple but satisfying combat system. Despite their thunderous impact, your punches rarely attract wider attention. So once the guy in front of you is down, you're free to go back to the shadows. Gunfire is the only thing to bring down the entire Reich upon you, and it's easily avoided. Your whip can snap weapons out of enemies' hands, at which point they forget they ever had one, and their lust for fisticuffs takes over. It's slightly chaotic and precarious by design. But equally, I don't think there's a ton of meat here for those who do love a tense stealth experience. To support that cinematic feel, guards have been made about as intelligent as the heavy objects you frequently hit them with. And while there are elements of immersive sim design, such as alternative routes to discover, they're all very light touch. That keeps things from getting too slow and cerebral. But when stealth is the core experience, I do worry that the systems here are a bit too shallow to stretch across a whole game. Like, IGN hyped it up and glazed it, but the second you look at some of these outside sources where people are actually like critically evaluating what they played, there's like a lot of problems and red flags and stuff. And I mean, I've said that I thought the enemy AI looked really dumb in the previews that we saw, but
Speaking of TGA, have you heard of the game Howard's Legacy? It got snubbed last year. Can you do a drunk news segment? Type 4 or streams, they are like Christmas tree.
Thank you, my friend. Howard's Legacy, that is the game I think we all need desperately. I'd play it instead of Hogwarts Legacy, just Howard's Legacy. That would be funny. Somebody should go through the trailer for Hogwarts Legacy and do the deep fake thing where they put Todd's face on on the protagonist's face. That could be funny. You should do that. If you do that, send me a link. But yeah, as for the other one, let's see. Can you do a drunk news segment? Thank you for your streams. They're like Christmas. Thank you, my friend. And thank you for the 13 months. That's crazy. As for drunk segments, I don't know. I've always been like anxious. I thought for like fundraisers or for celebration stream or something, we could do like shots and stuff. But I know it can occasionally break TOS, and I don't know. I've always been too anxious to do something like that. But maybe we do, like, if we ever do a collab with Joe Raptor where we do that, maybe we have a big celebratory stream when they announce the Hogwarts Legacy stream, and or Hogwarts Legacy, Jesus. When they announced the Horizon Zero Dawn, whatever multiplayer game, when they announced that, and maybe on launch day for that, maybe Jor and I do like a drinking game or something. We make a series of predictions for what's going to be in the multiplayer game, and then whoever gets it wrong has to take a shot. That could be funny. There's all sorts of things we could do. Yeah. There's all sorts of things we could do. But okay, we should watch this real quick. New segment. Also, Hayden, thank you for the pie super sticker thing. Thank you, my friend. John, hello, my Latin lover. Can we watch the new Path of Exile 2 video thing? Dude, PoE 2? I'm not typically like big into ARPGs, like hardcore ARPGs. It looks freaking fire, though. Like, am I the only one? It looks like stupid good. I'm not sure if I'm ready for that. Like, that might be my December obsession. Like, I'm going on vacation in the Bahamas in early January, where for like 2 weeks, I'm going to be trying to relax and chill. And so like we'll spend days on the beach and stuff, of course, but I suspect that I might be experimenting a lot with Path of Exile. Yeah. It's going to be fun. I just got back from Bikini in Nassau. Oh, really? I've never been to the Bahamas. I've never been. I'm very excited. We're going to do the whole deep sea fishing thing. We're going to go and it's going to be a good time. It's going to be a very, very good time. Actually, to see where we're going to be staying, I hopped in Microsoft Flight Simulator and I selected like the airport we land at and just flew around the island. Microsoft Flight Sim is ridiculous, by the way. Like, it's ridiculous. If you're ever going anywhere, seriously, just like mark it in Microsoft Flight Simulator and it's all, I don't know how they do it. It's like a mix of Google Maps and some other satellite data, but it's like amazing. It's crazy. It's crazy. With the boys' family. Oh yeah, the whole family's going. Yeah. Whole family's going. Okay, let's see this. Let's see this. New segment for real this time, I swear. Here we go. This is a deep dive into Indiana Jones: The Great Circle from the Xbox official podcast. The official podcast. This has always weirded me out. Like, this is the corporate podcast that they do. It's kind of implied that it's more casual and chill, but it's basically one big commercial. So I just want you to be aware of that while we go through this. This is not like an independent podcast as far as I'm aware. This is the official Xbox podcast. So it's, as I said earlier, it's like those Disney ones Jenny Nicholson talked about in her Star Wars hotel review thing. It's like the big official Disney one. So they're not going to reveal anything potentially concerning. This is basically a hype piece, but I want to hear while they talk to some devs if they mention anything new or unexpected, because I've already filmed a deep dive video on this game. Oh, I have the stream still. That's funny. I have the stream come on. There we go. I have the stream unmuted because I was checking the audio earlier. There we go. Okay, pop back over to wherever we were. Boop. Okay. Let's see what they say. Let's see what they say though. Here we go. What I was going to say is I already filmed the skeptical look video at the game, but I want to see if they mention anything new here that we could add to that video before we publish it. So let's see if there's any breaking news here.
Hello and welcome to the official Xbox podcast. I am Joe Screbbles, editor-in-chief of Xbox Wire, and I am incredibly excited to say that we are here to talk Indiana Jones and the Great Circle. You have probably already seen that there is a near 15-minute deep dive into the game, going through things like story, combat, puzzles, and a lot more ahead of its December 9th launch. And with that video covering a lot of topics, I wanted to take that deep dive and dive even deeper into it. And that is why we have got Axel and Jens from Machine Games who have joined us. Thank you very much for taking the time. I know it must be incredibly busy for you right now.
A bit, but it's a pleasure to be here and be, having the opportunity to talk with you about it.
Oh, well, we're going to talk a lot about it.
Bring it on. I love these types of interviews. I typically wish that they would be more willing to open it up more, because as I said in the preamble to this on stream, it feels like a lot of gaming journalists nowadays, they're not really journalists. They write descriptively, if you know what I mean. Like, they write and they describe games purely descriptively, where they're not being critical or critically evaluating stuff. They're just describing what they see. So they play something like Star Wars Outlaws and they go through a level and they're like, I went through the level and I stealthily took out 5 guards, and then I looted this room. I took a thing out after using Nyx to open the door that was locked because Nyx climbed in a window. And then I got the thing I needed and I snuck back out using some moving crates that pivoted around the level. And then I jumped off and I escaped on my speeder bike. Okay, that was a descriptive piece, right? A critical journalist or somebody that's like evaluating it and reporting on it could be like, yeah, I did all that. And I noticed that the guards were behaving in very dumb ways. I could take out a guard standing right next to another guard, and even though they definitely should have heard the takedown, they didn't, and I was able to then take them down immediately too because their AI was so poor. That stood out to us. That's not mentioned in the descriptive piece, but it is mentioned in like the evaluative piece and the piece that's offering kind of an editorialization of their experience. And I feel like a lot of games journalism is about the descriptive writing, where they don't want to take a clear stance. They don't want to describe anything clearly. They don't want to critique anything or look at it more critically. They just want you to describe what it is. And whether that's done to preserve access, as some people suggest, where it's like it's all about access journalism. They don't want to upset the big corporation that's going to invite them to the event, so they just refuse to really critique it. Or if it's because they just don't want to deal with the blowback from the fanboys who would freak out if you did that. Like the videos I did leading up to Starfield, like where I was saying, hey, it doesn't make any sense where we will have a spaceship, but we can't fly it on planet surfaces. So we're going to land in like little bitty fish bowls. Is that what we're doing? Like, how is that exciting? Where they're going to generate a few points of interest, then we hit a invisible wall and we have to go back out. Like, I don't understand how this is that impressive. This seems like it's not the fluid experience that's being pitched. People freaked out about it. You know, as I said earlier, they mass downvoted videos, and after the game came out, people kind of saw what I was talking about. We're like, oh, okay. We get it now. But there's none of that critical evaluation or discussion about games from these big outlets. Like, nobody's doing that type of thing, which I think is why those videos resonated with a lot of people, because it's just something that nobody's really doing. Instead, you get pieces that are indistinguishable from this, which is like an official corporate sponsored podcast. And it's indistinguishable from like coverage that you'll see on big sites like IGN or GameSpot. And I think that that's the big problem people have with gaming journalists, is that they're not trying to be journalists. They're just trying to glaze something or just be purely descriptive so they can't get blowback from anybody, and they upset nobody. And I just find it like really frustrating, because when there's red flags, you'd think that they would call them out, but they just conveniently look over them.
So, I have been lucky enough to play 2 hours of this game already, which has been incredible. But for a lot of people, this deep dive might be their first really extended look at how this game fits together and all the various moving pieces that are there. So before we kick it off, I'd love you to give a sort of top line summary of this game and the various elements of it that people are going to get their hands on very soon.
Yeah, absolutely. So Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, it is a first-person cinematic adventure action game, and it's developed here in Sweden by...
That just raised like so many red flags for me. Did you hear what he said? Did you hear what he said? That's very interesting. Hold on. I want to see if I'm making this up. IGN 3 weeks ago. Epic adventure action.
The last truly great Indiana Jones movie came out 35 years ago. Since then, pop culture's most famous archaeologists' last two big screen outings have been flops. In fact, Indy's best work since The Last Crusade has come in video game form. 1992's LucasArts point-and-click adventure classic The Fate of Atlantis, The Collective's excellent third-person action-adventure The Emperor's Tomb on PS2 and original Xbox in 2003.
Here.
Circle showed me, among playing Indiana Jones and the Great Circle showed me, among other things, is that it's more of an adventure-action game rather than the typical action-adventure game.
I feel like he's framing this as like his realization, when it seems like this is the marketing term that they're using for the game.
Cinematic adventure action game.
Because the standard phrasing is action adventure. That just, it hits my ear weird. I don't know. It hits my ear weird. I think if it is that they're marketing it as adventure action, and that's how they're marketing it. And he's like, that's how they phrased it to me at the event, and that makes sense to me. That's fine. But in that preview, it sounds like he's saying, I've realized it's an adventure action game, when it sounds like that's the marketing bullet point from Xbox that's just being echoed.
And it's developed here in Sweden by Machine Games in close collaboration with Lucasfilm Games. And the game is set in between the events of Raiders of the Lost Ark and The Last Crusade. And one of the main missions with the game and the purpose and kind of one of the driving force behind it has been to make sure that we put the player into Indiana Jones' shoes. We really, really want you to feel like Indiana Jones. So with every whip crack, with every shot fired from your revolver, and with every punch to an enemy face, we really want you to feel like Indiana Jones.
And it really does. And I think you'll get a real sense of that as we go through. So kicking off this video, we start with this cutscene that seems to lead us into an action segment that looks to be just kind of a moment after a puzzle has been solved. So can you tell us where we are here and how we've got to this place?
Well, I don't want to spoil too much. Like, there's some sand going on around here, so maybe you can figure out that this is sort of the more deserty part. But this is a very special moment in the game. It's one of those places where Indy finds himself in these kinds of ancient places. And I love this part of him, like, turning away as he destroys this really ancient artifact for whatever reason. There's a lot of going on here that makes sense as you play through the story, but it's one of those really indie moments in the game that kicks off this series of events that are very indie.
So I just realized I was blocking him that whole time. I'm a professional streamer, if you can't tell. Yeah, Detective Steven strikes again. I mean, it's all about framing, right? Like, and if the approach is maybe it's just parallel thinking, like this is just how he's describing the game as adventure action, and then the Ryan McCaffrey, he approached it as adventure action. He's like, oh, that makes sense. Could just be parallel thinking. But whenever I'm like, it seems like we're just glazing the corporation that gave us access to the preview, and then it's framed as though you've realized the game is like this, when that's like the big marketing term that they're pushing is adventure action, not action adventure, even though it's a very unique and very specific flip of the term and the normal colloquial way it's used. It just hits my ear weird, and it makes me wonder if it was more of like the marketing inspiration than anything else. But anyway, yeah, I mean, I'm starting to feel like this is just one big 25-minute like, I mean, I had a feeling it was a big 25-minute commercial, but that's basically all it's been so far. I'll speed it up a little bit.
This is a good example when it comes to the type of environments and which type of settings that you can be expected to come across throughout the entire game experience. Mysterious places that get your brains spinning and your the cogwheels ticking, like what is this, what happened here, and most of all, how do I get out of this mess that I now ended up in. So it's a good example on some of the very spectacular events that you will find yourself in the game.
And we will often talk about this game as being adventure first and everything, and this particular scene is interesting because it's adventure, but at the same time we have these action elements that are so important for Indiana Jones. Setting up this trap that gets the adrenaline going.
I think,
again, the doubling down on adventure first, action second. Very interesting. Interesting. Make of that what you will. I do think they are pivoting off of action first because it sounds like this game is much more stealth oriented in the gameplay. That's what all the previews have stated. But it's like that's fine. That's fine. But I think when people think action, or when they think Indiana Jones, they think action adventure. They think like big, crazy set pieces, interesting, unique environments. When I think of it, I of course think of the boulder rolling after Indy. I think of the plane while the guy, is standing there, and we all know what happens with the propeller when it hits the dude. like those are the things I think of when I think of Indiana Jones. And I don't really think of carefully crouching behind boxes and working around enemies. It just doesn't, it's not what I would expect. The video title should just be like how cool our game is. Well, it's just, I'm going to give them a little bit more time, but I'm starting to feel like they're going over the same trailer we've already seen, and it's just going to be more like I mean, it's fine to promote your game. It's fine to promote your game. That's fine. My problem is with it being pitched as like a deep dive into this in a podcast form when it's just kind of like
interesting.
Hype it
as
up.
You say, like so many games have that idea of like, this is a puzzle section, this is an action section. That feels like such a seamless segue from clearly a puzzle has been solved, and then we're into this moment of action out of nowhere, and that kind of unexpected element, which does feel more like cinematic, because you wouldn't have chapter headings that said this is now a puzzle. So yeah, I think that's it's a really nice way of kind of showing that off. Here we see Marshall College. This is a hallmark of a classic Indiana Jones story, but this is a very specific point in the timeline, as you said. So we have a lot of very traditional ideas about Indy, but who's this Indy? Are there specific things about this point of time for the character that are defining him in your game?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think there are two ways that you can answer this, or like there are two portions to the answer that at least I can try to cover a bit. One of them is that we portray the Indiana Jones as the world gets to see him basically for the first time, as he gets presented to the world in Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's where we've been looking most heavily in terms of reference and inspiration to try to capture that version of the beloved character. You know, he's a very human. He's teacher. He's at the same time he's also kind of a superhero, but maybe not with superpowers. You know, but this kind of action man. And at the same time, there's this great warmth and depth with him as a character. And all of those components and character traits is what we've been trying to portray and push forward. And that's like one part of the answer. We wanted to experience that. But on the other hand, we also have, obviously we're making a game, we're not making a movie. So we have player agency and we have the freedom of choice. So you want to make sure that the Indiana Jones that you will experience as a player is the Indiana Jones you want to experience, right? So if you prefer to be more towards stealth, or if you want to go more brawling and you know, fighting with your bare knuckles more, or even, you know, pull out your revolver a little bit more from time to time, that's perfectly fine, because that's what we want to make sure that you as a player experience, your own Indiana Jones experience.
It is the kind of,
I mean, it's stealth or brawling. This gameplay has always hit my eye weird. Is that a term? Like, these guys are about shooting, but this is kind of what I mean with the AI. Where Indy is standing alone. He just whipped that guy. The weapon drops. This guy now sees Indy. You would think he's like, oh God, he's coming for me next. And he would start shooting. But he just kind of like stands and pivots. And same with this, like Indy just beat this guy up. 1, 2, 3, 4 guys. There's another behind him. They're all just kind of standing there. Yeah, see back there. And they're just gonna like try to punch him. They all are wearing revolvers. They all have, or not revolvers. I forget the name of the pistol, but they all have pistols. Like, why are they like, okay, dangerous man, we'll slap him. It just doesn't make sense. It feels like one of these games that you're gonna have to kind of turn your brain off in order to get through. Like, that's kind of what I'm expecting. Oh, I muted.
The length of the puzzles, you know, how long are the stealth? Obviously been a lot of work making sure that we get the balance right in between, you know, how much gunplay should there be, how the length of the puzzles, you know, how long are the stealth sections, or, you know, when we do allow for certain type of game mechanics, and getting that kind of balance right has obviously been a lot of tweaking and hard work from everyone within the team.
In terms of coming to the game itself, we just saw a section of the Vatican, which was a section of the game I got to play a few weeks ago. And something really occurred to me while I was playing, which is, despite being linear in inverted commas, it felt very open.
What did he call them? Is that a term? Do people say that?
Despite being linear in inverted commas.
Inverted commas? Instead of quotation marks? Is that a thing? Is that just like a British thing? I have never in my life heard somebody call them inverted commas. That's a thing? Yeah, it is. Dude, English, you gotta get your act together. Like, you British folks? You got to get your stuff together. I mean, I felt bad about the whole revolution for a little bit, but now I'm starting to think maybe we were right. First the tea and now this. Unbelievable.
It felt very open to how I wanted to get to that objective in a way that I really wasn't expecting. So was the design idea here, you're kind of giving people a place to get to, but giving them the freedom to get there in the way they want to?
Absolutely. And as you say, like there's a wide range of, from strictly linear roller coaster rides to these very open sections. Exploration is really important, even in the most linear sections of the game. It's something we want to reward the player with all the time. And we've designed the game around that because he is an explorer as a character, and we like that in terms of game design as well. So it's important.
And it also ties in, very tightly with one of the core focuses that we had was to make sure, that's why we're talking that this is an adventure action and not an action adventure. If you're start to dissect the aspect of adventure, what is that? Obviously a big part of adventure is exploration. Getting the sensation that you are actually uncovering and discovering secrets and hidden gems throughout the entirety of the experience. So there's a lot of win-win with that setup.
Yeah,
I love hearing Swedish people speak English because like some of the consonants they pronounce different. Like instead of hidden gems, it's hidden gems. It's just. It makes me smile. I don't know
That's
why.
the thing. I felt almost like naughty for not doing it the way it wanted me to. I was like, I'm just going to try climbing up these battlements and jumping onto a zip line instead of fighting all these guys. And it worked. And I was like, well, that is really nice. We're seeing a lot of puzzles here. One thing that I'd love to ask is, how do you design a video game puzzle that feels right for Indiana Jones? Like, what is that? What is the vibe that you have to capture while still making it an interesting thing to play?
It's something we had to figure out throughout the development. It's puzzles is actually something that Machine Games and the team as a whole has not too much experience with. So figuring out what that was for this game, that was an interesting journey. And where we ended up with is a really broad variety of what puzzles are. Doing puzzles in a big game that's trying to be both challenging and accessible at the same time is a challenge, right? How do we make sure the players don't get stuck? So we had to work out puzzles that could be challenging. At the same time, we need to make sure there's a way for players who doesn't necessarily want to, fiddle and think and all that kind of stuff. So.
Oh God! Here we go. We want to find a way. So if players don't want to think, they don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. Dude, we were just talking in the last stream on Friday. We were just talking about Avowed where, was it Destin who tried it? Destin was mentioning like the excessive hints that companions give, where it's like you walk into a space and immediately, oh, there's a treasure up there on that upper level. We should go outside and climb up. It's like, okay, you solved the problem. Or Atreus in God of War, where you walk into the level and he's like, maybe we shoot arrows up there, freeze it, and the water will fall. It's like, okay, you just spoiled the whole puzzle. Cool. Like, there's this weird thing in the industry in the last like 5-6 years where every single damn AAA game assumes players are brain dead and have no critical thinking skills. And it drives me crazy because games like Elden Ring show the complete opposite. Players can think critically, players can solve puzzles, players can find creative ways to solve problems or to create builds and stuff if you let them and kind of push them into that. And guess what? If they can't figure it out, they'll Google it. Problem solved. Easy peasy. But there's this big push for, I think they frame it as like accessibility, but there are solutions that exist. And this is one where in the attempt to create the solution, you're creating a new problem, where you're dumbing down the game so much to make it playable by the lowest common denominator of like people who want to, in their words, think about puzzles. You're trying to make it playable for those who just can't think or don't want to. And in turn, it makes the game extremely oversimplified and stupid for everybody that's above that does want to think. When I'm doing a puzzle, I'm like, if it's a puzzle, make me think. Otherwise, it's not a puzzle. It's just tedium. You know, like we have these. Did I bring them in? I think I did. Hold on. Like, I have all these 3D printed puzzles, okay? For the D&D campaigns that I run, every once in a while, if there's like an interesting little puzzle, or if I have a really cool piece of treasure or something for the party, I'll give them one of these, and I'm like, real world, you've got to solve it. None of this rolling to solve a puzzle crap, okay? You're going to actually solve it. And it's one of those things where, like, I don't want you to tell me how to solve it, how to build this into a cube. I want to figure it out. I want to work on it. I want to figure it out. And it will be all the more rewarding when I do, because I will have earned it, you know? That's how it works. I will have actually earned it by thinking and solving it that way. Booyah. Beautiful. I didn't need hints. I thought about it and I solved it. Boom. That's what puzzles are. Otherwise, it's just tedium. If you're like, okay, now there's 3 crates. You can stack them and you need to get up on that ledge. How do you do it? Well, I'm going to make 1 crate and then I'm going to stack 2 on top and it's going to be like stairs going up to it. Damn. They solved it. It's like, that's not a puzzle. That's just a roadblock. And that's not, I don't find that engaging. So anyway, this is, I don't know if this is a selling point or the selling point they think it is, but having a robust hint system built in is really important. Hopefully there's a toggle at the very least.
It doesn't necessarily want to, fiddle and think and all that kind of stuff. So having a really robust hint system built into it as well was really important. So a lot of effort and work has gone into getting all those components to gel.
Yeah, obviously we see puzzles and traps in the movies, right? And most of the time that's like pulling a lever or stepping on the pressure plate and something gets triggered. But when you start to expand on that and making a video game out of it, like what is actually leading up to that? Or what happens if that lever is broken and you need to find, another part to make it work? And I think one of the beauty that has happened throughout the, the entire puzzle work with the puzzle team and the designers is that the puzzle has almost got their own life. It's like an entity within the game and it spreads out. It's not only you going into a room. It's like, oh my God, here's a wall with some cogs and I need to solve it. Yes, sometimes we have those scenarios also, but sometimes the puzzles just expand so much more and you need to, run some distances to find clues or collect things to put you in a position to solve it. And I think that's why some of the more larger puzzles that we have now in game is very rewarding because it puts you on a path and it forces you to platform around and actually dissect the environment and use your head.
If it actually does that, I will be happy. But I fear this is going to be one of those games where it's like, I mean, we've all played them, where it's like, okay, we have our level. And this is the door you have to get through, but it has 3 slots for you to put something in. And the items are located around the map for you to collect. And they're all guarded by guards. So you have to go in the level and stealth around all over the place to collect them, bring them back, and then run over here, collect this one, stealth all the way back. And it's going to take you 35 minutes to do it. But eventually you'll do it. And it's like, I don't generally find that super fun. There's ways to do it well. I think like Resident Evil 7 did it decent, where there's all those doors with specific objects that require it. They had some interesting sequences and like big encounters in between those, but even that started to get a little stale for me. And I'm guessing this is laid out in a similar way in a lot of the missions. I'm guessing.
And so I think some of them are very rewarding now towards them.
I think one of the things that's definitely worth pointing out, and it's made clear in here, but getting your hands on the game, you really see it, is that the kind of the delineation between the main quest puzzles and optional puzzles. And in the Giza section, I was practically tripping over tombs without realizing that there was another puzzle. Like there was a bit where I thought I was crawling into a back entrance to a main story quest, and actually, oh no, it's a whole other tomb with a different puzzle in it, which is incredibly satisfying in terms of exploration. Like, it's always nice to find more stuff. But I wondered how you...
Or I could flip it and be like, it's confusing because I thought I was doing main story stuff and I was actually doing side stuff because it wasn't clearly delineated. There's two ways to look at it. I'm warning you now. I am an ancient Egypt snob. I am a fanboy for ancient Egypt stuff. One of my most watched channels in the last month or two is, where is it? This channel. This is a Luke approved channel, okay? History for Granite. It is a channel that literally just explores like the pyramids in like crazy detail, like ridiculous levels of detail. All sorts of little bitty things you might be wondering, where it's like, hey, what's like this one, why the summit of the Great Pyramid is missing. He goes through journal entries of various historians and people like Pliny and Diodorus describing the size of the platform when they were there, and he tracks down like to the specific year when the last few blocks, when these blocks were removed from the pyramid. Like crazy. You got that, Tism? I've wondered, like, my brother has Asperger's and stuff, and I was like, I mean, it's called a spectrum for a reason. And every once in a while I'm like, no, I don't think I'm there. And then I realize I'm watching a 45-minute deep dive on where a few blocks of stone went in the Great Pyramid, and I'm like, okay, yeah, maybe maybe I'm a little obsessive over some things. But yeah, that's a Luke approved channel. I recommend them highly. But without a doubt, when it comes to that Egypt section, I will be watching very closely, and I will be giddy if they implement it very, very well. My standards are high because I love me some ancient Egypt stuff, just Egypt in general, and I will be enjoying that. So I'm very excited for that. I'm very excited for that bit. But let's give them one more chance to wow us with the rest of this, deeper dive that seems like it's just a hype session.
You think around, especially with your ideas of challenge and accessibility, can optional puzzles get harder because people don't have to complete them? Do they have to be smaller because they're optional, or do you have large scale optional puzzles that people can find? Like, how did you think about bringing both those sides together?
No, exactly what you're saying. Like, we have a substantial part of the game that is optional, especially for the open sections. If you keep your blinds on, you can go through those and just experience, a third of the major content there, or even less. There's plenty of stuff to stumble on. Finding a mystery around every corner was kind of one of the things that we wanted to give you that feeling that there are things to discover if you just look, and not only small things, as you say, there are big pieces of content that you wouldn't encounter unless you go off the beaten path.
Okay.
Right. And we've talked a lot about the adventure, so let's talk about the action, stealth and combat, which that's a lot of your minute-to-minute play in this game. One thing that really struck me when I was playing, and I think you kind of see an element of here, is combat initially in the early stages was a lot harder than I thought it would be. Like the melee combat and really getting your head around not being hit as much as hitting feels like a key part of that. It was a big part of your thinking here, sort of fighting smarter rather than harder in that sense, or at least until you get some of those skill book upgrades later on?
Well, it's about the character again, right? Coming back to like, what would Indy do? What would you do as Indy? So it's about setting the right expectations for the player. This is not a game where you just rush straight into a group of enemies and expect to take them down. You are not a superhero. So stealth is going to be the starting point for a lot of different scenarios in this game. But it's Indy. The majority of the combat in this game is going to be hand-to-hand, using your whip and using the items around you to overcome these situations you put yourself in.
I love the items around you element as well. That idea that...
Sorry. There's such a delay with so much of their behaviors. Like, you just beat his friend over the head with a hammer, and he just kind of turns like, what? It's just, I think that that's part of the reason that it just seems clunky. And maybe when you're playing it, it doesn't feel clunky. Because to be fair, like with stealth stuff, there's a lot of difference between what it looks like and what it feels like. There's a big difference between those two things because it might feel responsive, but look clunky. You know, one of the earliest examples I can think of is like the melee combat in The Last of Us. If you have ever played that game, there's this thing that happens when you have like a 2x4 and you hit somebody with it, where they actually have taken a number of frames on the back of that animation and cut them off so that it's just kind of like a snap right to the target, the final point of the animation when you're hitting somebody. And they did that because they found that it felt much more impactful when you're playing the game. If you skip those few frames of the animation and it slams right into them, it feels much more punchy and impactful than if you just did the smooth animation all the way through. It looks like something's kind of bugging or too sharp when you look at the footage, but once you play it, it feels way better. And maybe this is something kind of like that, where the slower response of enemies looks
I love the items
off
around you element as well. That idea that
and it plays well, but to me, it certainly looks really slow.
Almost everything, or at least everything I think I came across, was a distraction or a weapon. And that kind of idea of things going wrong and just being like, well, I've got this bottle that I was going to try and distract this guy with. I might as well throw it at his face.
It ties into like another important aspect of the game, or of the IP, which is humor as well.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have humor within an Indiana Jones product, I don't think it would really feel like Indiana Jones. So it's an important beat that we've been trying to massage into throughout the entire production cycle, and we have that represented in many different aspects. Obviously, in VO, in cutscenes, and how people move and animate, but obviously also in the minute-to-minute gameplay, just to make sure that we capture that kind of not fully slapstick, but it needs to have a sensation of humor even in the fighting. And
yeah.
you can hear some fantastic lines from Indy, played by Troy Baker, as he has fun remarks on the enemies going down. That's Professor to you, as he knocks them out. It's just.
Get ready for the banter. I'm so ready. Yeah, we'll check it out. I was optimistic that there would be some cool revelations or something in this, but it does seem like it's kind of what it seemed, which is just a corporate podcast meant to, I mean, it's basically a commercial, but it's framed as a podcast with more information. I'll be putting out my Skeptical Look video later today, so go check that on the main channel. But I basically think, Spark Notes here, my perspective is that there's a number of red flags. There's a number of problems I've seen that are conveniently quickly overlooked. Like there's the article from Mara Station that outlined how it had AI issues, they said, when translated to English. Quote, the second more serious issue is that the artificial intelligence needs significant improvement in both stealth and combat. It's noticeable that enemy behaviors require refinement, as sometimes they act erratically. And the PC Gamer preview also says it's just a fairly basic stealth game, where they say that when you do get spotted, it's rarely a mission ender. Guards seem happy to have a quick fist fight rather than running off to raise alarm, using both the simple and satisfying melee combat system. Despite their thunderous impact, your punches rarely attract wider attention, so once the guy in front of you is down, you're free to go back to the shadows. Gunfire is the only thing that'll really bring down the Reich upon you, and that's easily avoided. Your whip can snap weapons out of enemies' hands, at which point they forget they ever had one, and their lust for fisticuffs takes over. So there's not going to be any, oh no, I dropped my rifle. Because I imagine, like, let's act this out, okay? Todd, right? I'm here. He whips the gun out of my hand. Where's the gun? I don't have a gun. I'll use a box. He whips the gun out of my hands. None of that. That's crap. That's crap. What it's going to be is, oh no, my gun. And that might feel fine in the gameplay, as long as you don't think about it. It's true the movies, sure. But it does feel weird to have like 3 or 4 guys that have rifles aimed at you, and you whip them all out, and then they're like, oh no, my rifle fell. Oh well. Yeah, I feel a little weird. So there's that. They go on, as you see, but equally I don't think there's a ton of meat here for those who do love a tense stealth experience. To support that cinematic feel, guards have been made about as intelligent as the heavy objects you frequently hit them with. And while there are elements of immersive sim, such as the alternative routes to discover, they're all light touch that keeps things from getting too slow and cerebral, bringing back thinking. But when stealth is the core experience, I do worry that the systems here are a bit too shallow to stretch across a whole game. And this is what I've noticed is I've heard nobody say the stealth is, or the enemy AI is interesting or challenges you in the stealth. Everything I've heard is that the people either don't mention the AI, they don't mention the puzzle complexity or interest. They just describe the game and move past it really quickly, echoing marketing points from Microsoft. Or when they do talk about it, they have notes and they have problems. And that to me suggests that, you know, the only people thinking critically, it seems, that are willing to discuss these things come out and have frustrations and problems with it. Could be better by launch, could be improved. But when you see the IGN video, which is basically just a puff piece, like that makes me more suspicious of that coverage that's just glazing it. Because they don't mention any of the things other people have problems with. They just don't mention them at all. So maybe they notice the problems. Maybe. But time will tell. I'm not, to be clear, I'm not anticipating a review code. I don't think they would send me one. If they do, I'll be pleasantly surprised, but I don't think they will. And I'm not going to pull punches or change what I think about something just to get a review code or to stay on their good side. So we'll see what happens with that. I'll try the game. It's on Game Pass. Like I'll try the game. I'll let you know what I think of it. But as of right now, I think from what I'm seeing, it looks like mid, if mid were like personified into a game. Like, to me, I think it's going to be solid for indie fans. I think it's going to be have probably 1 or 2 big cinematic moments. Other than that, I think 90% of the gameplay is going to be crouching behind crates and squeezing between cracks and stuff, and collecting items to use for puzzles with a lot of excessive hints. I think that that's going to be like the vast majority of the game. And I think because what I've seen of the AI and what people who have tried the game have said about it is that the AI is quite lackluster. And for a game that focuses on stealth, that's a big problem. Like that worries me. So I think it'll be interesting to see if they make improvements. But as of right now, I think it's pretty clear where I think this game is going to land. And no shocker, I think it gets that that IGN stereotypical 7 out of 10. Maybe if they give it to like Ryan McCaffrey or somebody who seems to be a big indie fan or something like that, maybe they give it like an 8. But to me right now, it seems like it's going to be in that 7 out of 10 or like C minus range. So that's my guess. I don't think the hype is there to really go for a review code. I mean, how this typically works is that if What I was told for the IGN or for the previews for Indiana Jones, I was told we were not on the corporate approved list. It's my understanding that corporate approved list was from Disney. So Disney did not want me previewing the game for whatever reason. But that's my understanding of what prevented me from the preview. That's my understanding. I'm not entitled to any codes. I would love to know what changed, because I was on the Disney list for Avatar, and maybe because I didn't love that. Maybe that's what got me off the list. But either way, it's not gonna, again, like, it doesn't change anything for me. Like, if I do the previews, I make a video on the previews. If I don't go to the previews, guess what? I still make videos about the previews. I just talk about them indirectly. So you're not getting away from me that easy, Disney. You can't shake the Luke, okay? Unlike Todd, who disarmed me without even moving. Did you guys see that? It's impressive. Disney owns Avatar. Yeah, they own James Cameron's whole production company, Lightstorm, I think, something like that. And then they own Lucasfilm, so they own Indiana Jones and all that. Yeah. Yeah, again, if you've not seen it, it went viral like months ago, but that Star Wars Hotel video that Jenny Nicholson did, fantastic. We just pulled it up earlier in the stream, but she does a really good job of breaking down how the second people start trying to kowtow to Disney, like, all credibility goes out the window, because to stay on the good side of the mouse, like, you have to be the most sycophantic brown noser. And I'm not saying, to be clear, like, I'm not saying that that's true of the gaming people that went to the previews or anything. I don't think they've been glazing Disney specifically, just for whatever reason they were on the good side this time. But for the parks side specifically, to be on the good side of the parks division, to get invited to like the Disney parks and to the Disney theme rides and stuff, you have to, like, you cannot say anything negative, otherwise you're cut. Like, any Disney parks influencer, you should not expect to get the clear cut, cold hard truth, you know. Anyway. That's right. Disney will restrict the type of action allowed in Indy. Yeah, I mean, it's probably why, like, the gameplay is more stealth focused, because they want Indy to be viewed as like a good guy. They don't want him to be just killing people incessantly, fighting waves and waves and waves of enemies. Like, I think that's part of it. So yeah. You're telling me that the lady that reviews food at the parks is lying to me? Yeah, well, and it's always like, you could tell Jenny Nicholson, she does a good job of describing it, where she's like, there are people who said that they went to the Star Wars Hotel because they were invited early as part of the previews that Disney did. These like TikTokers. And they came in and said, I went to Disney Galaxy's Edge and I had an amazing time. You know, they did their TikTok voice and everything. And she's like, but the previews that they went to were only 6-hour previews. They did not stay for the weekend. They did not stay for multiple days. They implied heavily that they stayed and experienced the whole thing and that it was amazing, but they didn't. They lied. At the very least, they were being very fast and loose with their language, heavily suggesting that they did the whole thing. And that's the whole thing, is like, if you want to stay on the good side, you have to do that. You have to glaze. You know, you have to glaze. It's different for the parks, apparently. Like, on the game side of things, I think it's much more influenced by brand friendliness. Like, I think if they view you as brand friendly, then you're probably good. With Indiana Jones, I think they were looking to play it safe. And part of that is because they perform internal reviews of games, which some people don't realize. They do internal reviews of all of these games with Xbox. PlayStation does it too, where they will hire sometimes journalists, sometimes it's just other people within the company, but they'll bring people in to play through a game early. They did this for Redfall, for example. And they invited members of the company to play Redfall and then to give it a score out of 10. And that's how they did like mock reviews to figure out what people would think of it. And they were apparently super surprised when the game reviewed way worse than their internal reviews. But that's the same thing that they do with Indiana Jones, is they're performing internal reviews. They're getting an idea of what problems people may have and where they think there might be weaknesses within their lineup. And if there is something that they think is going to be called out a lot, that will inform who they invite and how they do it. I don't think it's a mystery why they invited mostly Xbox-focused, like TikTokers, for example, to the previews. And they didn't invite a lot of like hard-hitting gaming journalists or reviewers. And that's because I don't think the game will hold up to that scrutiny based on what I'm seeing. If I'm seeing this stuff through footage captured and provided by Xbox and Machine Games, and just from a couple of articles describing their experience with the game, like, I'm sure if I actually had my hands on the game for 3 hours, it would have been readily apparent, you know? So, let's see. Do these companies bring in their own families to playtest? Of course, people will be kind in playtests. Yeah, and I think part of it is that whether it's internal reviews where they have like studio members or other studio members review it, there's always going to be a little bit of going light with that. And then the other piece of it too is that if somebody is told this will be improved by launch and they believe you and they alter their score accordingly, that can significantly change things. If like back in June when I tried Star Wars Outlaws, like there were problems I called out back then where I mentioned the AI wasn't great. It wasn't behaving super realistically, and it was a problem for me. And I mentioned that, and we were told, oh, they're making big improvements there. That's going to be way better at launch. If we believed them, that could have changed the coverage. That could have changed all of that. But that didn't end up being the case. Like, it ended up being about the same at launch. And I think that was another problem that happened with Cyberpunk 2077, where a lot of people thought, well, they said that they're going to improve it. They said they're going to make it better. So a day one patch is probably going to make it great. But the second you believe a company and then they don't deliver, that's how you get a game that's like really, really, really rough that somehow got scored with like an 8 out of 10 or something. You know? Like, people forget, but there were brands. Xbox era gave Redfall an 85. It's fantastic in most ways. A few baffling design decisions around its co-op implementation, some frustrating technical issues. It's fun as hell solo, ridiculously so in co-op. With a little post-launch support, it's going to become something special. This may end up being Arcane's worst reviewed title ever, but it's going to be, as they give it an 85, they acknowledge it may be the worst reviewed title they ever made. Like, what? Like, whenever you start to pause and you're like, oh no, I mean, these people are like all roughly the same. Like, no, some of these websites are ridiculous. And if you ever are wondering if an exclusive game on a platform is good, don't read the review with the platform's name in the website title. Like, you may love Nintendo stuff. I'm not going to a Nintendo whatever website to read it. Like, I'm not doing that. If I want to know what the next PlayStation exclusive is like, I'm not going to go to PlayStation deluxe.com or whatever it is, like, or Xbox Wire to see what their new Xbox game is like. Like, it's not what we're doing. But this is why, again, like, to bring this all the way back to the beginning for Indiana Jones, my frustration is that a lot of gaming journalists nowadays, they don't editorialize, they don't like critically evaluate stuff. They just kind of describe. They're just descriptive. They just say what they see and that's it. Nothing more. And as a result, like, nothing critical ever comes up. There's no problems ever mentioned unless the game is so overwhelmingly bad. There's no defending it. Like with the previews for Suicide Squad. Do. So those previews were so bad, like nobody could really defend it. Where was the preview? Yeah, here it was. It was Destin again. Destin's a G. Destin is one of the guys. When I see he does something on IGN, I'm like, okay, yeah, no, he's doing what he's doing. Oh, I forgot about this. Dude.
Harley, no!
Worth it.
Can you imagine if they just flipped this around and like Harley Quinn got frozen and locked in place, and then like Green Lantern or somebody comes up and then grabs her butt? Can you imagine? But because it's the Flash, it's okay. Like, what are we doing? What are we doing? Is he a friend of the channel? Yeah, he's an actual friend of the channel. He's an actual friend, yes. For real this time. Like, the whole thing was just bizarre. But even this, unfortunately for Suicide Squad, once the fun story bits end, you're left with a much less inspired combat system and an open world that's filled with tedious tasks. This was during like the previews. We played it and didn't like it. I remember like IGN and Destin were getting flamed for this by some of the hardcore fanboys who were like, not into it. I played this as a tester just before Christmas. Very mediocre, but it's also not my style of game. You should consider taking... Oh, it's, a comment got removed. I remember back when there were high hopes for Gotham Knights and just recently realized I wasn't even willing to play it for free. I feel like this is going to be one of those. When not to delay a game, Rockstar probably should have just released Suicide Squad last year in May like they were supposed to. Probably wouldn't do any better, but the negativity would have been drowned out by the Tears of the Kingdom, Redfall, Gollum talk. Yeah, man. Anyway. Yeah, sometimes previews are bad enough that they, like, it will get discussed, but it feels like a lot of games journalism nowadays is afraid to be super critical, and so instead they just kind of describe and leave it there. Also, one of you guys mentioned this. Sony is reportedly developing a PlayStation handheld console to compete with the Switch and the Xbox One. This would be specifically a handheld device that runs the games natively. So it would not be cloud-based. It wouldn't rely on streaming to the portal. It would be its own device that functions purely on device. It still is up in the air whether this ever sees the light of day. I mean, they're working on it, but the report from Bloomberg basically says it's in the early stages. And so they're working on prototypes. They could end up releasing it in a few years. They could end up just scrapping it and being like, we don't think it has profitability potential. But if they did that, I think that would be solid. I'd be down for it. The portal, I think, just recently has gotten to the point where it makes sense, where it clicks. I don't... Like, when it launched, it didn't, in my opinion, it didn't make a lot of sense. They had a bunch of glaring issues where, like, if your Wi-Fi that you were connecting to required like a browser login, so like, you stay in a hotel, you have to put in your hotel number and your last name, and then you get access to the Wi-Fi. They didn't have an internal browser, so you couldn't log into Wi-Fi like in a hotel or in public or whatever. huge glaring issue. They fixed that. They added that. So now it's okay. They added cloud streaming just the other day. That's now something where you don't have to stream directly from your PS5. You can now stream through PlayStation Now. That's awesome. So now I think it's at the point where it's justifiable and you could get it. When it launched, there were a couple of big problems, but they fixed pretty much all of them as far as I'm concerned. But anyway. Oh yeah, also just so everybody knows, the rumors that Christopher Judge, it was like, oh, he's teasing announcements for God of War. He said absolutely not true. You can't tease something you know nothing about. I will be making announcements in the near future. I can guarantee none of them will be about our beloved God of War. I'm awaiting updates like everybody else. So people who were suggesting that there was going to be something God of War related, not true, fact check wrong. He said no. So don't expect God of War announcements at the Game Awards, which a lot of people were kind of thinking this meant. Doesn't look like it's going to be a thing. So anywho, I think we're caught there. Retro Noir Spider. Thank you for the sub with Prime, by the way, my friend. Thank you, my friend. Okay, I think we will call it there. I've got to go turn on the smoker because I've got to smoke some chicken thighs for tonight. It's going to be delicious. I appreciate the gosh darn heck out of every single one of you guys hanging out with me. You guys are awesome. Metal Gear Delta, we're going to probably look at that when we get a little closer. Yeah, we'll look at it once we get a little more info. But anyway, you guys have a wonderful, wonderful evening. Stay safe. We'll be back rocking and rolling. No podcast Wednesday because Jor is on vacation, so it's just going to be you and me. Just you and me. Classic. It's going to be a good time. We'll play out with our Todd Howard song until next time, my friends. Much love. Keep an eye on the main channel because that video will be going up later. Until then, hugs and kisses. Bye-bye.
I drove my rusty pickup to the local game store door. Starfield gleamed upon the shelf, couldn't wait no more. Todd Howard spun his stories of galaxies afar, but when I fired up that game, I didn't get too far. Oh, Todd, you sold me stardust, but gave me empty skies. Promised me the universe with all your alibis. I fell for all your stories like I always do. Starfield left me wishing for a game that's true. They boasted endless planets, each one unique and new. But after planet number 3, I'd seen a deja vu. The critics didn't love it, gave it mediocre scores. Just another space misfire echoed across the boards. Oh, Todd, you sold me stardust, but gave me empty skies. Promised me the universe with all your alibis. I fell for all your stories like I always do. Starfield left me wishing for a game that's true. I searched for epic battles, but the AI wouldn't fight. Characters were wooden and the dialogue was trite. Todd promised me the cosmos, but left me in the dust. Now I'm trading in this game, it's betrayed my trust. Oh, Todd, you weaved a fable of worlds beyond compare, but all I got were glitches and load screens everywhere. Still somehow I'm considering when the next game's nigh, 'cause hope's a stubborn thing, and I'll give it one more try. Oh, Todd, you sold me stardust, but gave me empty skies. Promised me the universe with all your alibis. I fell for all your stories like I always do. Starfield left me wishing for a game that's true.